Fine.
All right, well, we will call this meeting to order. It is 6:36. This is Monday, January 25, 2021, for the City of Sandy Planning Commission meeting. And for the record, this meeting is being held via Zoom. So we have everybody here, including some guests on Zoom. First thing on the agenda then is to do a roll call. And that Kelly?
Yep. Commissioner Carlton,
Present.
Commissioner Lasowski,
Here.
Commissioner McLean-Wenzel,
Here.
Commissioner Hook, Commissioner Mayton,
Here.
and Chairman Crosby.
Here. All right. And the very next thing is to introduce the new face and the new voice that you heard during roll call is Stephen, our newest planning commissioner. Stephen, you want to just give us a brief hello, tell us your experience in planning commission and maybe where you work and what you do.
Hello everyone, my name is Stephen Hook, and I am a recent transplant out to here into Sandy. I spent the last few years as a planning commissioner for the city of Fairview, and I'm excited to bring that experience here to Sandy. I work for Providence. I manage a IS team for electronic medical records, and do some side businesses on the side as well.
All right.
Welcome.
Also,
Welcome, Stephen.
Okay, thank you. Glad to have you here. And by our next meeting, we should have the 7th seat filled, I believe. We will be interviewing early in February for that position. The next thing on the agenda is something we do the first meeting of every new calendar year, and that is to select our chair and vice chair. Currently, obviously, I'm the chair and Don is the vice chair. So we need to go through that awkwardness of nominating and voting and taking care of those two positions. Any discussion, comment, or thoughts?
I just had, Jerry, it did cross my mind. Do we have to swear in Stephen?
No, you know, we used to do that, and the last I heard from David was
Hi, David.
we didn't have to do that when we did do it. So,
Oh, okay. Well, it was good. I mean, it's kind of like being president or something. You know, you get a pen on a Bible and say good stuff.
Yeah, you know, I never really looked at it before, but the only time that's required for Sandy is for the city council. So, of course, the planning commission could choose to do it, but it isn't required.
Oh, okay. Well, Jerry, I nominate you for chair, assuming you want to continue to carry the gavel for one more year.
I am willing as long as others are, but
Chair, I was going to ask a question. I didn't know how this process worked. Being the first time I actually sat through this, I think I didn't pay much attention last year. Is there anyone on the, how do we know who wants to volunteer for those positions?
that'd be a good way to start it. If there's, yeah, that's what I said. We go through the awkwardness of this. It's kind of, you know, we don't.
You've done it very informally over the years, which actually I give you credit for. And normally it's just a matter of, you know, anybody that has an interest can express it. Anybody that thinks somebody should do it may nominate that person, and usually the planning commission has allowed that person to say, do you want to do it? And Jerry's, you know, been a very capable chair. So the past few go-rounds, I think Jerry's been renominated and renominated.
For 15 years or
there's-
more.
Yeah, and there's really, you can make it as formal or as informal as you want. So,
Well, that's what, that was gonna be, I didn't
Maybe a
know if we had rules on succession, if we had to rotate the spots or if they needed to, if they cared if they stayed constant. It's irregardless to me, I'm indifferent with it. It's just, I didn't know what the protocols were.
Yeah, there's no rotation rules or anything like that. So does anybody, this will leave it open and for honest input. If anybody would like to express an interest in serving in either one of those roles. I think you kind of know what the roles do. It's pretty quiet out there.
That sounds like crickets, Chair.
Well, I nominate Jerry.
I second that nomination.
Okay, it's been moved. We'll cover the chair first. Been moved and seconded that myself be the chair. We'll just do, can we do a voice vote or what's the best way, David? Thumbs up? Okay.
Hands.
Hand votes. Okay, all in favor, thumb or hand or whatever. I see all those up. Okay, well, you're stuck with me for another year.
Hey, you didn't say you didn't want to do it.
Just for clarification, was that 5-0? I'm
Yeah.
typing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You didn't vote,
No.
Jerry?
You don't get to vote for yourself, Jerry?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess you could. Yeah, I think actually, yeah, that's a good point. We have in the past. That is how we've done it. Is
Yeah,
that you
sure.
can vote for yourself.
That's right. We did that last year.
Yeah, and
he's
we've
just
done
a very humble man, you know?
He's abstaining.
Put your hand up, Jerry. It's 6-0. Move on. We
6-0.
started early so we could get on to the good stuff.
Yeah.
okay.
6-0 in the minutes.
We'll move on to the vice chair. And I know I've already booked one camping trip on the fourth Monday of the month. I forget which month it is. There'll be at least one time when the vice chair has to step in.
Well, Chairman, I'm going to jump in here. That I'd like to nominate Don Carlton, Commissioner Carlton, as the vice chair.
Are you willing, Don?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, it's something that it's like just a decorative title. I mean, unless you don't want to show up, it doesn't take any work. That's what happens about once a year.
Although we did talk about, if you remember a year ago, we talked about kind of sharing the chairs on some of our lighter meetings to give experience to others. And we never did that. Maybe it's because we never had a lighter meeting, but I think that's still something we could do where somebody could, even for one public hearing or something, just step in. So it's not a total new thing to someone.
Well, that's, Jerry, I would say that would just be your call. If you can't make it, you can ask the vice chair or, talk to the vice chair and discuss and, have somebody else do it. I mean, I would say it's your call. You can go ahead and do that.
Well, I think what Jerry was saying was he could be there, but kind of as a wingman to somebody else to do a portion of the meeting. Is that what I was hearing from Jerry?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That'd be good practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I said, and Jerry can do that. I mean, I think that would be great. That's what we talked about last time was there's no reason. There are times that we've had both chair and vice chair gone, actually. I remember when D'Souza did one once.
I think in terms of succession planning and just having a strong commission, I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Well, remind me, I may be calling on some of you to do some public hearings. Not tonight, though, so don't worry.
We have
All
a-
right, all in favor of Don?
Well,
Yep.
we didn't get a second to his motion.
I'll second.
Okay, it was seconded by Ron. So all in favor of Don for the vice chair, thumbs, hands. All right, unanimous. Good. We can move on.
So that was 6-0 also.
Yes, correct. We have the minutes from December 16, 2020 in our packet to approve. Any observations, changes, corrections, notes anybody saw? If not, we'll move into a motion to accept.
I move we approve the minutes of the December 16th meeting.
I will second that.
Okay, then moved and seconded to approve the minutes December 16, 2020 as presented. All in favor, hands up. Wave your hand, say aye. Okay, are you with us there, Don? Are you hearing? I can't tell. Okay, and I'm going to assume an abstention
That's correct.
on Steve's part since he was not here. So that's five in favor and one abstention because he wasn't here.
Got it.
All right. Give the opportunity now for anybody in the audience to speak to the commission on non-agenda items. We welcome your comments at this time. If you are on Zoom to speak, click the raise hand button that you'll see on your screen and wait to be recognized. If you're on the telephone, dial *9 and that will effectively raise your hand and then wait to be recognized. And that will continue to be the procedures for the rest of the evening.
I'm just giving it a second here. I do not see any hands raised.
Okay. You all should have read Kelly's report, the director's report. Any questions on his report or any questions just in general that you may have?
So yeah, I wasn't gonna really plan on going over the report since it's all in writing. I was gonna let you know that the February meeting, which I sent invitations to, that will only be a work session for the TSP 101 training that's going to be presented by DKS and ODOT. And then they're also going to give like a 10 or 15 minute update on where they're at with the bypass feasibility evaluation and TSP. So I hope everybody can attend that. That'll be starting at 6:30 and probably ending somewhere between 8 and 8:30. They said it'll only take an hour and a half, but we know these things tend to run a little long. So I would anticipate about a 2-hour meeting. And then after that, then the rest of the night's off. We're not going to hold the regular meeting, I decided. In talking to Jerry, we're going to try to give you a short night for the first time in a long time. And then in March, I sent out a doodle poll for everybody to complete. I've only gotten responses from a couple people so far, I think 3 or 4 people. We're trying to define if the meeting should be the typical 4th Monday of the month or the 5th Monday of the month. And the reason why I want to get input on that is because the 4th Monday of the month is spring break. I will not be there, but we can hold the meeting without me. That's not a big deal. But so that I would need responses to that, whether it's going to be the 4th or the 5th Monday, so that we can make sure we have a quorum.
Can we just do that now?
Yeah, I sent a doodle poll, but we could just talk about it right now for a few minutes if you guys want
Let's
to.
do it.
Just help you solve it and then we can make a decision and move on.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm
I
open
will
either.
also be gone on spring break, so I won't be able to make that 5th one either.
The 5th one?
Or did you say spring break?
Well, so my spring break for my kids is March 22nd through the 26th. But so the 2 options for the night meeting that I had proposed were March 22nd, which would be our typical 4th Monday of the month, or March 29th.
Oh,
I'm open both.
the 29th is better for me. I won't be there on the 22nd, but you guys can meet then if you need to.
And I think I had answered the doodle. The 29th is fine if you allow me to bring a birthday cake.
Ah,
Is it your birthday?
Yeah.
Oh,
You want to do a PC meeting on your birthday? That's brutal.
Nope, that's fine.
We did
Well,
one on
Ron-
my birthday a few years ago, but I didn't let anybody know.
Well, you could work with Ron to arrange cupcakes delivered to everybody's house, you know.
I was gonna say, I'll offer to do it. I'll go to Tollgate and make the deliveries.
I'm fine with either the 22nd or the 29th.
Yeah,
There-
I thought I did the doodle, so I just wanted to verify what my vote was. I'm good on both days.
How about you, Stephen?
I can do either.
Let's do the 29th then. That seems to be everybody can make that date.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And Kelly, I'm just going through because I answered. Did you get my response to the doodle?
Let me pull it up. Just give me
I
one second.
definitely did it, and I usually in the last one.
Well, maybe more of you did it, and I just didn't see it recent enough. Hold on one second. It only takes a second for me to pull this up.
But it's
So
the
it says
29th anyway.
It's
Yeah.
Monday. Yeah, I got a response from Steven, Dawn, Ron, Chris, and Jerry. So nothing from Paulus or David Doofman or Shelly, actually. I got a response from Emily as well.
That's you, Hollis.
Okay, I've been publicly shamed.
And Dawn, on the 22nd, you said you were not available, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, we were maybe thinking of going to Florida, but we don't, right now, I'm not going to book that because I don't think we'll get our vaccine before then.
Okay. So it sounds like it's pretty unanimous that most people can make the 29th then.
Yep.
Okay. Let's just do it on the 29th. You don't need to worry. If you haven't responded to the doodle poll, don't worry about it at this point. I'll close it out. And that's all I had, unless anybody had any questions specifically for me.
Yeah, just maybe this bleeds actually maybe into the next item, but maybe in just a short sentence or two. No one to go into it. I looked at the city council's, part of their meetings, and they in December they did turn down the Bull Run Terrace after lots of discussion, and appeared that you guys were able to do some additional calcs on how many housing units. I couldn't quite tell what the new information they got. That seemed to change some minds.
Are you asking what the new information was that they
Yeah,
received?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and Shelly can remind me if I'm wrong here, but I think the main thing that we included was that the calculation that was done kind of during the meeting was a little bit off. And it was actually, I think it was stated during the meeting that it was somewhere around like 8 or 10 units difference. And then when we recalculated, I think it was somewhere between 35 and 40 units. So that was the main difference in the information that they received between the first reading and the second reading. And, I guess that information was enough to kind of sway their decision-making to a denial.
So that was the difference in housing units that you thought you'd have with the zone change from R2 to R3.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we were just able after the meeting to do kind of a more precise calculation, taking into account like street right of way and parkland dedication. And yeah, we're able to find that number in quite a bit more precise of a way.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, as you know, Dawn, being a mathematician, that when you do math on the spur of the moment, kind of under like a pressure cooker of, hey, can you guys spit out some math for us real fast? That does tend to lead to error sometimes. So, and that's kind of what happened at the meeting. So.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kelly, Shelley. We will move on to our first of 3 public hearings tonight. This one is a quasi-judicial. It's a zone change. It's one that we will be recommending, passing a recommendation on to City Council. So at 6:56, I will open this. This is public hearing for plan application 20-041, zone change, rogue fabrication zone change. And any abstentions from anybody on the Planning Commission? And to signal a response, just as before, wave your hand. I don't see anything. Any conflict of interests? Okay, I don't see anything. Any ex parte contact that you need to declare?
If driving by it on the way to Fred Meyer's ex parte, I do it all the time, but
Yeah. Yes, probably all of us.
Yeah, I wouldn't declare that as ex parte.
Any challenges from the public to the Planning Commission, to any individual or the commission itself on hearing this? And again, if you want to be heard tonight, if you're on Zoom, click the raise your hand icon, wait to be recognized. If you're on the phone, it's *9 to be recognized. Okay, if you testify, you must raise all issues you wish to address at this hearing. If your issue is not raised at this hearing, you may not be able to raise it later in any appeal. And keep in mind that this public hearing will be heard again. We will be making a recommendation to City Council. Your comments should state why the application should or should not be approved, or include your proposed modifications you believe are necessary for approval according to the standards. If you do not raise specific issues at the final evidentiary hearing or by close of the record, or fail to provide statements or evidence to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal the decision to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that particular issue. Any party may request that the hearing be continued to a later date, or that the record remain open after the hearing is closed. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. With that, we turn it over to staff.
All right, let me share my screen. Okay. So just a quick vicinity map. This lot is located just south of the intersection of Champion Way and Industrial Way, over on the east side of Sandy. It's about, I put the exact number of yards in the staff report, but it is quite a ways back from Highway 26, and there are a few buildings screening the lot from Highway 26. Okay, so they're requesting a type 4 zone change from I-1, which is industrial park, to I-2, which is light industrial. And just a quick note, just so we're all on the same page, this doesn't require a comprehensive plan change because it maintains the comprehensive plan designation of industrial. They're just requesting the zone change from I-1 to I-2. So currently, the lot, which you'll see outlined there in red, is zoned as I-1 industrial park. So all of the blue area is I-1, all of the purple area is I-2. And so you'll notice that there's already a lot adjacent to the subject property, which has been zoned I-2. So just a little bit of background on the difference between I-1 and I-2. So according to the comp plan, industrial park, or I-1, is intended to allow desirable and beneficial mixing of light industrial and warehousing businesses and commercial uses. So that's kind of the crux of what I-1 is this mix of light industrial and commercial. Whereas I-2 is intended to provide locations in suitable areas for light manufacturing and warehousing businesses, which have minimal impact on their surroundings. That's from the comprehensive plan. And then another important thing to note from the Sandy Development Code is that because building design standards are less restrictive in this zone than in other zones, buildings, regardless of use, shall be screened from view from arterial streets and highways. So that's something that's really important to understand in this rezoning application, is that one of the key reasons why the applicant is requesting the shift from I1 to I2 is for these less restrictive design standards. So it's Sandy style architectural standards and setbacks that are different. But again, just going back to that vicinity map, you'll notice how far back from Highway 26 it is, and it's screened by other buildings. And so in staff's opinion, this is a suitable area to be zoned as I2 and to benefit from those less restrictive design standards. The review criteria, according to Chapter 1726 in the Development Code, has 4 points. The first is to determine the effects on city facilities and services. So I2 land uses are actually anticipated to have a lower traffic volume than I1 land uses, and that's because it's removing that potential commercial land use that's allowed in I1. According to our Public Works Department, the proposed zone change should not negatively impact public facilities or create any service capacity shortfalls. And then also a condition of future design review and future development is that we will require extension of water and sanitary sewer. So we're not anticipating any kind of negative effects on any city facilities with this zone change. The second point in the review criteria is to assure consistency with the purposes and intent of the zone map amendment chapter, which after staff has reviewed the purposes and intent of the chapter, we don't see any potential conflicts with the intent of the chapter. We see this as, promoting, reasonable changes in potential land use, meeting that chapter. The third point is to assure consistency with the policies of the comprehensive plan. Because this isn't a comp plan change, there aren't that many policies in the comp plan that speak to this. One policy in the comp plan that this promotes is to preserve industrial land. And again, because this isn't changing the comp plan designation of industrial, it's just changing zoning designations within that industrial umbrella. We are preserving industrial land. And then finally, assure consistency with the statewide planning goals as may be necessary. I go into a little bit more detail in the staff report of what statewide planning goals are relevant, but I wanted to point these out in this presentation. Goal 9, which is economy, economic growth, economic development. We found in the city's EOA that smaller manufacturing businesses of less than 5 acres are beneficial to Sandy and desirable for the city. And so this rezone with the potential land use is beneficial to the city's economic development. And then goal 12, transportation, that in fact rezoning it to I2 would generate 456 fewer daily trips given a worst case scenario. That was based on the study done by the applicant's traffic engineer, which was also reviewed by the city's traffic engineer and ODOT, who found their methods for that adequate. We are putting a few conditions of future development, including screening of the parking area or any outdoor storage with at least 20 feet of landscaping, Sandy style approved colors on all future buildings on the subject sites, including all walls and any metal roofs. Design features consistent with those identified in the submitted elevations. If you looked through those, that was something that the applicant didn't need to submit, but they went ahead and submitted those. But we'll be reviewing them further in their design review application. And then in accordance with the comprehensive plan definition of light industrial I2 zoned areas, future development of the property shall have minimal impact on the surroundings in regard to noise, light, smoke, odor, or any other pollutants. We received one public comment from our economic development manager, David Snyder, who said that the zone change is going to allow a potential land use, which will encourage a diversity of jobs and support small business in Sandy. That was the only public comment we received. We didn't receive anything negative surrounding this application. And finally, our recommendation is for Planning Commission to forward a recommendation of approval for this rezone to City Council.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. Any immediate questions for staff before we move to the applicant? Okay, we will switch the mic and camera to the applicant for your 15 minutes of presentation.
Yeah, my name is Ryan O'Brien. I'm a planning consultant. I prepared the application for Joey Gambino. And actually, I'd like him to start off with the presentation and indicate why he had chose the site. And then I'll just follow up with anything else I need to add. Is that okay to do that?
Oh, yeah, you've got
Okay.
the floor.
Okay, Joey, go ahead.
Can I get your name? Can I get your address for the record so that when we send out the final order and everything, we have that?
Are you talking about me?
Well, it'll be for both of you, but yeah. For
Yeah,
you.
my name is Ryan O'Brien, and the address is 1862 Northeast Estate Drive, Hillsboro, Oregon, 97124. And I also might add, next to Joey on the pictures above here, is Mike Ard. He's the traffic engineer, if you have any comments or questions for him. Okay, Joey, go ahead.
Cool. So can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. So of course I'm Joey Gambino. I started the business Rogue Fabrication in my garage about 10 years ago. And much like Stephen Hook mentioned, he's got a few side businesses going. Rogue Fabrication was a side business. I was a mechanical engineer designing rifle scopes for companies and industry, doing typical mechanical engineer things. And I always had a passion for off-road and motorsports and things like that, like many young men. And those things have to be safe. They need roll cages, they need bent tubing, you have to have a welder, all these tools. The most kind of elusive and difficult to acquire, difficult to use tool in the range of stuff you'd need to build these vehicles is a tubing bender. And just to build the actual components of the roll cage, to actually bend the structural tubing. And being a mechanical engineer and seeing room for improvement in things, I of course wasn't satisfied with the ones that were out there. Decided to make my own. And before I was done making one, my friends all were saying, "Hey, that one's exquisite. We really, we want one too." And before I knew it, I was telling my wife, "Hey, I'd like to build these and take them to shows and sell them and stuff." And this side business turned into pretty much a decision-making point of, should this be my full-time job or should this just stay a side hustle? So it became a full-time job. It outgrew my garage. We moved from Hillsboro to Sandy, out in farm country. So we've got some acreage here and quite a bit of space. And we're operating here, and we're quickly growing in sales and popularity. And we're looking at obviously outgrowing our space again, which is great. It's one of the best problems a business can have. But we are providing living wage jobs. We're making stuff here. We proudly display Made in the USA on our products. I mean, I call our cardboard box manufacturer, who's in Canby, and I ask them, do you make your cardboard here? I ask the people who make our stickers if they make them here. And this is just the small details. I mean, obviously the metal, the machining, all the real critical components, except for a few nuts and bolts and some small hardware items, are made in the US. We source some components from outside of Oregon, of course, and we ship worldwide, primarily within the US. But we do export quite a bit of our stuff to other states, of course. And it's really just kind of a, it's been a dream of mine to own a business and to contribute to GDP. I remember taking economics in college, and I was deeply saddened that GDP was just absolutely heading downhill, that we're turning into a kind of a service country. And I'm really happy and proud to be employing local people and providing, good benefits and enriching people's lives with more than just income, with a safe place to work and a consistent place to work that, doesn't have layoff problems, has consistent sales growth, and, doesn't cause people injuries and stress, and obviously makes things. And it's really exciting when I see the stuff our customers make, because our customers are buying these tubing benders and other tools that are belonging metal shops, and most of them are building roll cages and other structures with them. And sometimes those structures are hand railings or artwork or suspension parts, but most of them are roll cages, and those also save lives and help promote safety in the motorsports industry. And it's not an act of philanthropy. Obviously, we're in business to make money, but it is really enriching when you see a car that just got crushed on a track and you see the guy standing next to it who was in it, and he's alive and he doesn't have any broken bones. And so it is really a rewarding business, and we don't bother our neighbors here, and our neighbors are primarily farms and residences. And I don't think if we bother them here, we're likely to bother them on Champion and Industrial, where it's a primarily targeted industrial zone. So.
Can I
Okay.
get your address for the record?
Do you want me to take forward, continue on, Joey?
Yeah, I know, Ryan, you've heard the story a few times already. Is there anything, any good parts that I'm leaving out that I should touch on again, or?
Okay.
One thing, Joey, we do need your address for the record.
Oh, certainly. It's 42335 Southeast Marmot Road. And that's, of course, Sandy 97055.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I can continue on, Joe. I just got to mention a few things. One is you had a very difficult time finding an I-2 zone piece of property that was actually for sale in the city of Sandy, right?
Yeah, that's true. Obviously, there's budgets involved, but at the time when we were starting this process about 8 months ago, we were looking for a room with enough space to grow, because obviously our business is growing at a dynamic rate. And there was almost nothing that was I2, or I don't even know of any I3 or of any recently, but I didn't see anything that would actually facilitate a decent sized light manufacturing facility like we're trying to build. And so that's why we are trying to acquire an I1 and rezone it to I2, is because of the scarcity of available I2 locations.
Okay, the next thing I think it's important is that you were not required to do this, but you prepared site plans and building elevations to show what you're proposing, to make sure that the city staff and the planning commission can see what we're proposing, to hear if there's any negative comments about what you're proposing. Because you've got an option on the property, you haven't bought it, but you didn't want to buy it until you knew that you felt fairly confident that this project can be approved and you can develop it. Is that correct, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Shelley mentioned that briefly, that we submitted the elevations and some kind of bird's eye type of views of the property, kind of like an isometric angular view, just to show the architectural style that we were going to be developing, to really show that we're not just going to build some big metal sugar cube, some big factory, basically, in some place and try to do some, leverage profiteering scheme. I mean, we were really trying not to tarnish the beauty that is Sandy. I mean, when you drive through Sandy, it's nice. And when you hit the little side streets and stuff, it doesn't just change drastically to something different. It still looks and feels like Sandy. And so we submitted those elevations and paid to have all that work done and drawn up so that we could show that we're going to go a little above and beyond what's absolutely required in the zone we're changing to. The idea.
I know it's important, your background as a mechanical engineer, you studied the structure pretty thoroughly. I know you and I have had a lot of discussions. You've had a lot of discussions with your designer, but you know how much you can afford to build, right? How much you can afford the expense. And you went through the code on the I1 zone, and you basically determined that it's just too expensive to build. And
yeah.
Gaining that much from it.
Yeah, and the geometry is a big part of the problem. The roof pitch has a steeper requirement in I1 than I2. And that roof pitch, if you just draw a triangle as wide as a manufacturing building, it ends up being over height for the area. And so that's one problem. The other problem is all the roof variegation required. So yeah, as Ryan alluded to, there's a bunch of requirements in I-1 that are prohibitive to building a contiguous manufacturing facility that is efficient.
But you could have proposed some variances, but it's actually better to go to the I-2 zone. That's what we came up with. And you know, the whole area has a lot of I-2 already, so it's not like we're out in the middle of nowhere, you know, a whole sea of I-1 zoning. You really can't see it from the highway, and the traffic impact is limited. So actually, it's a pretty good application. And it fits in well. I think the architecture really fits in well with the area. And you're right, having a very high pitched roof with all the manufacturing with the higher walls that you have to have for your manufacturing, it just wouldn't be compatible with the area. So what you're proposing is actually more compatible. So that's really, and I think the staff has already gone over everything. We've got all the information in our reports that we submitted. So we're pretty much done. Mike, do you have a few words to say, Mike Ard?
Sure, I can add a little bit. I did look at what's allowed under the existing zoning and what's allowed under the proposed zoning. As discussed in my report, the change in zoning will actually result in a slight decrease in the number of trips that are allowable within the site. What's not really said in my report is that the actual development that's proposed on the site will generate far fewer trips than what's allowed in the zone. So really, we'd be looking at less than 20 peak hour trips, less than 100 daily trips for the site, probably at completion. So that's significantly less than what's contemplated under either of the reasonable worst case development scenarios that are required under Oregon law. So we're not anticipating big impacts to traffic, even when the impact of truck trips are considered there and the area is adequate to serve this type of development. And I suppose I should add for the record my address as well. That is 17790 Southwest Dodson Drive. That's D-O-D-S-O-N, Sherwood, Oregon, 97140.
Okay, I have this is Ryan O'Brien again. I just have one more comment, and then we can turn it over to questions from the planning commission. And that is manufacturing brings money in that's from outside the city into the city. So it's a lot different than retail businesses where you're actually spending money that's already here and then it goes away. Manufacturing actually brings money, additional money into the city. So it's very, very important. I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that. And that's all I have. That's the end of our presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll move right into public testimony. And for those that may be listening or viewing and wishing to speak to this application, we will be calling for testimony in 3 groups. First group, I'll ask for those who are in favor of the proposal and give them opportunity to speak. After that, we'll give opportunity for those who are opposed to the proposal for their opportunity to speak. And finally, we'll give opportunity for those who are just have a neutral position. They're neither for it or against it, but maybe just have a comment or so. And for, as you've picked up already, we do ask that you give us state your name and your address for the record. So the first is if you are in favor of the proposal and wish to speak tonight, again, if you're on Zoom, click the raise hand icon and Kelly will recognize you. If you're on the phone, dial *9 and that will effectively raise your hand and then wait to be recognized. So we will give opportunity now for public testimony in favor of the proposal.
I had my camera off because I was eating some food, so I didn't think you guys wanted to watch that. So. I do not see anybody with their hand raised.
Okay, we'll move on to opponent testimony. If you are not in favor of this proposal, again, raise your hand either with the icon or *9 on the phone.
Again, I do not see anybody with their hand raised, so I would move on to the next.
Okay, and then finally for any neutral testimony, if you just want to make a comment about the proposal that's neither a proponent or opponent position.
I have one hand raised. I think it's Ela Kasab. I will unmute them now. And as Jerry said, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Eli Kasab, and I am the owner and the developer of Sandy Cinema. And I'm actually in favor of this development. Bring them and bring more of them. It's all good for Sandy. And thank you all for your hard work. And Joey, good luck in Sandy. You're going to do very well.
Thank you very much, Ellie. I appreciate it.
Okay, that's all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it, Kelly?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, with that, you're muted, Kelly.
So I wanted to explain to people that the only way for us to send notification or decisions to people, if they're part of the record, is if they give us their address. Otherwise, we have to do a lot of hunting to find their physical address or their mailing address. And sometimes we can never find them. And in those cases, they just don't ever get notification of the decision. So if you want to be included, you need to give us your address when you speak.
And did Ellie give it?
No, but he owns the cinema, so I can find his. I'm just saying that's the purpose for getting people's addresses, is so that it's less important tonight on this decision because you're only giving a recommendation to the council. However, like on the batting cage decision, which is coming up later in the evening, if you render a decision tonight and somebody speaks, I need their address to be able to mail them the decision so they have appeal standings. That's why we asked for the address.
Thank you. All right, with that, we will turn it back to Shelley for any recap and final comments.
Yeah, so this to me seems like a pretty straightforward rezoning application, refreshingly non-controversial. So just a couple of things that I wanted to touch on. So all of those site plans which we received, the building elevations, all of those things, you know, of course we looked through as part of this application, but because they weren't required for the application, we didn't comment on them. We didn't do any analysis on them in the staff report, but those will be analyzed at the future design review when they actually apply for development. Yeah, that's the only thing that I really wanted to touch on. Kelly, did you have anything else?
The only thing I would like to say is that I think whenever we have an application that's bringing living wage jobs to the city of Sandy, as both the planning director and then also as helping with economic development and urban renewal, to me, unless the proposal is just really poor taste, which is not what we're seeing tonight whatsoever, I would always encourage to try to accommodate and make it work. There's a lot of communities out there that what they want and what they're trying to seek is living wage jobs. So I think when you have an applicant that's bringing those jobs to your community, like I said, as long as the proposal is well thought out, and Mr. Gambino has been very upfront with staff and has been a great person to work with. So I encourage you to recommend approval and forward that to the city council.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, not only living wage jobs, but as Mr. Bryan said, exporting jobs, which are good for any small economy.
Okay, thank you. And we'll give the applicant, if you have any rebuttal comments, there hasn't been any anything brought up that you might rebut, but you do have that opportunity.
The only comments I have are just to thank Ellie for his support and obviously to thank the city. I won't waste a ton of time flattering you guys senselessly, but you guys have been pretty easy to work with. I've worked on a few projects in the past with a few different municipalities, and you guys seem to be the most welcome to ideas, and you guys seem to have a pretty healthy vision for not just like what your job title says or what your responsibilities are, but what's honestly going to be the best for the city and the community. And you guys seem to have a good idea of kind of how to see how that converges with your responsibilities to your actual job title, and use it to do things well and do things right. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we can move into our discussion. We will keep the public hearing technically open, but only if we need to ask the applicant a question. And the sooner we get to the point where we don't need to ask a question, somebody remind me to have us close the public hearing. So discussion. Thoughts?
Well, I guess I'll start by saying that I really appreciate the applicant's presentation and the thoughtfulness that went into it. I'm excited about the potential that it'll bring to our community. And although I understand the reasons for going from the I-1 to the I-2 in terms of design elements, I really appreciate that in what you presented, that there's a nod to that. And for a manufacturing type building, I really appreciate what you did there. So thank you. Thank you for putting together such a good presentation. You answered a lot of my questions before I had a chance to ask them.
I had a question for Shelley. And one was, I was a little unclear on between switching the zoning. There was to be a 20-foot screening, or I wasn't sure how that was laid out. Was that from the street? It just said 20 feet of fencing. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, so that's going to be one of the conditions that we're going to put on for future development. Screening using 20 feet of landscaping to screen the parking area or any outdoor storage.
So is there any height to the screening? Is it just 20 feet from the sidewalk back? That's what I was trying to figure out.
I think what we were envisioning was more like shrubs, like not trees and not a fence, but aesthetic shrubbery and grass.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to envision, is what I would see as I drive by with that in there as a condition. So that's what I was, what the height, was it shrubs? It just seemed that part was just a little unclear to me of what that 20 foot would represent.
Yeah, and that's something that we'll get more specific in once we do the design review as well.
But if it's a condition.
that's where it gets a little kind of squishy.
Yeah, it's a little squishy for, I mean, if it's 20 feet of vegetation, I mean, it could be, you know, I'm not trying to make it into something bigger. I think the overall design, it works.
Yeah.
I'm behind it. It's just that, and for me coming up with that, that's my only thing, was just.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so the intent behind that was to not completely lose some of the benefits of doing I-1 Industrial Park, right? Making it look nicer, right? More kind of pedestrian oriented as opposed to, you know, industrial oriented. That was kind of the intent behind that, was to kind of keep some of that element of I-1.
And I sort of had the same question, because when I heard that and read 20 feet, was it 20 linear feet or 20 feet of depth, or where did it, you know, was it just 20 feet? The property frontage is obviously longer than 20 feet. So is it just, you know, 20 feet somewhere along the street? It was kind of confusing to see where it would be placed, unless it's just a setback issue.
The intent was 20 feet in depth.
Okay.
So the intent is 20 feet in depth of landscaping wherever there's parking or outdoor storage. So it's not 20 feet all the way across the property. It's 20 feet wherever there's those two use types on the property, parking or outside storage.
Okay.
That's the intent. I mean, if you guys want to add some clarification to that, you're more than welcome. That was just that's just what staff proposed. But if you guys don't think it's clear enough, then we can definitely talk about adding some additional language to beef that up and to make it more clear and objective for when we do review a design review.
Well, I think you have my intentions on it is if we're going from the I1 to I2, the design is less restrictive on it. And so to kind of keep some of those elements of just the 20 feet or whatever it is I know you guys will come up with a good solution for that, and the applicant is more than willing to work with it. Again, Don or Jerry heard it, I heard it. The 20 feet is just like of kind of where and what. So you've helped clarify it for me, so thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we can definitely clarify it in the revised staff report that we deliver to City Council. Because if two of you have the same question, I think that means that it needs clarity, is how I would look at that.
Okay.
Chair, I'll go ahead and just add a couple comments. I do have one question for the applicant, if it's permitted, and it's really generic in nature, but I want to thank the applicant as well. I think it's a great presentation. I think anytime we can bring manufacturing into our small community, it's going to continue to help us grow as a community. And I'm in favor of supporting this for City Council, but I would like to ask a question to Mr. Gambino. Consumers are increasingly showing interest in sustainability. Can you talk to us a little bit, or at least share with me, what your company's sustainability initiatives are for this new building and or your strategy into the future?
Yeah, I'd be happy to address that. A lot of the sustainability is going to come from what processes we bring into manufacture. With the limited space we have now, we're not doing most of the manufacturing on site. We're doing a lot of, welding and assembly processes and things like that. But most of the big time-consuming machining processes and the more equipment-intensive manufacturing is being done off-site. And those are usually the processes where you can really have green initiatives or environmental impact studies done and really see the benefits of those things from doing treatment of machine coolant and filtration of it, and then you can take the solids that you filter out and waste those instead of taking all the dirty coolant and wasting all of that. The other thing is sorting metals. We're starting to sort metals here on site as we're producing more metal chips, the little tiny pieces you cut off when you're doing machining. We, a few years ago, barely produced any. Now we're actually producing some. So we're sorting aluminum and brass and bronze, copper and its alloys away from stainless and steel. And so you can obviously recycle them for more money when they're sorted, but it's also much better for the environment because it's much, much harder to recycle those materials on the environment when they're not sorted. So thankfully in manufacturing, we're not saddled with this additional cost from being good to the environment in most cases. We also do sort our recycling, and we already, just due to the challenge of getting rid of it, honestly, but it's also very good for the environment, we sort and reuse a ton of packaging material. We reuse pallet wrap, including sometimes we have to clean it, but we do clean and dry pallet wrap and recycle that as void fill. No peanut leaves in a garbage can from our facility. We don't buy peanuts, but when they come in packages, we do recycle them. We just put them in a hopper and we put them back into boxes. So we will continue to do those things, Chris, but we will also expand as we expand our machining to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure metal is recycled efficiently and also make sure that we minimize our waste. So does that answer your question?
It does very well. Thank you. It was really more for the community. I wanted to make sure they knew what putting this facility on that lot would mean and what kind of impacts it would have on us from an environment standpoint. Thank you very much. You've answered it well.
Absolutely.
Any other comments, Don? Or okay, Don was first.
Yeah, is Jerry going to go? Okay to go ahead?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Well, I jotted down a few things. Again, appreciate the applicant and all the work they've done. Ryan, you've been a planner in sector. One thing I always look for in a presentation is just quick, short, and sweet. Why, based on the code, should this be I2 versus I1? we get lots of reasons because you want to do it. But, what I heard was, it costs too much. We hear that on almost every application we have. We need to have more houses built, like with Bull Run Terrace. Why? Because the intersection costs much. But that's not the decision criteria. The roof pitch, I understand that. I personally think the lower pitch is fine. And even in I-1, you could have, a person could ask for a variance to do that. I would suggest that if you do look at the zoning map, the area is not surrounded by I-2. The lot is surrounded by I-1, except on one side, there's one little lot. I look at the area across the street where the cinema is, etc. This was developed under I-1 standards, and very good. If you go down, this is kind of out of sight, out of mind, but I don't know how many planning commissioners have gone down to the end of Champion Way. We have a housing development down there. Was on the commission, we approved it. So you have residential going up by that way. It appears that there's all this focus on if it can be seen by the highway or maybe an arterial, then, it's okay to do something different. I'm looking at all the people that come and, go to Fred Meyer. I'm looking at the people that come to what's in I-1, and it's just like zone creep, because the next lot, then, come on and give us the same reasons to want to do the same thing. I would have been a little happier to see the applicant come to us with not a zone change, but with what he wants to do, but say, here's maybe the variances I need to go ahead and do that, so you still maintain that character. So, this is more in general. Okay, it's not against the business at all. It's not against, everybody tells me you need to bring jobs. Yeah, we need to bring jobs, but that's not evaluation criteria. We can come up with all kinds of reasons why we want to do it, but what are our evaluation criteria? And it just seems like, well, we can't see from 26. Well, shoot, if you're going to do that, we might as well just take that whole area, turn it purple, and we'll have a lot less planning commission meetings on that area. I don't know, they've been on it long enough, Ron and I now, and Jerry. How many hearings have we had in that area? And they all were around the same thing. So I haven't decided, if I'm plus or minus. I'm just concerned about the creep continually in general, and the lack of a reason based upon the code, as opposed to the good reasons the person has said it, but they all are best for them, like when it costs much. I mean, so that's my biggest concern.
Okay, thank you, Don. Stephen?
Let me get off mute there for a sec.
Yep.
Sorry. I want to talk to Don for a minute. And Don, I totally hear what you're saying. I guess this is just more, being a newer commissioner. I'm not as new as Stephen is, only a year and a half. But when I look at when the map was plotted for that area and that density of industrial zone, times do change over the course of areas. And I'm curious to the lot that's next door to it. And my initial thought too was, why would a city designate it I-1? Because they're looking for some retail space or commercial space to be used to drive traffic to it. And you look at the area around it, there are, the cinema, for instance, for the gentleman that spoke earlier that owns it, you're driving, consumers to that marketplace. But at the same time, we're looking to draw jobs into our community to create some livelihood here for the residents that are local, and create density for our own city. And I do understand exactly what you're saying, but isn't there some concept that maybe 25 years ago I-1 was what they wanted, but we haven't done a comp plan review in a couple decades? Maybe it is time to revisit, and what these applicants that are coming forth asking for zone changes is something that they're waiting for more of a comprehensive review to be done for the city, and we remarker some of the land plots that we have. And again, it's not really not trying to debate you. I'm just trying to offer a counter perspective.
Yeah, but about half of the lots that are in that area, the blob you see is a blob, but half of the area is already built. and it was built basically I-1, standards. I guess what I wanted to hear was, why can't he build his business and bring it there and leave it as I-1? And if he needs a variance or whatever, come to us basically with that. So I'm not saying it's not like we don't want the business or can't have the business. I haven't figured out why we can't have the business with it still being I-1, with considerations that the applicant hasn't really said, other than he mentioned the roof and then he just said cost. Well, if we used cost as a decision criteria, we hear that on every application. So I'm just giving you a counter view, I guess, on it.
And to chime in on the last one, well, I feel bad because Steve, I don't want to talk over you. You've been very patient, so I'm going to forego my comments to Mr. Hook. I think you want to chime in here.
Yes, Stephen, you have the floor. We will be quiet.
Thank you. So I wanted to thank the applicant for submitting design documents. That was very helpful, even though it wasn't required for this discussion. There was one thing that I noticed that for future meetings is it looks like the setbacks weren't 30 feet for parking, and so you might want to fix that if you come back. And then in regards to the latest conversation, in my previous city, we did have a lot of areas that were industrial or commercial that weren't being utilized for many, many years. And so we had to start reviewing, is this, we envisioned it this way many years ago, but it's not meeting the needs of growth and economic development in the city. And so that's when we needed to start reviewing, is that still the right decision, or do we want to start rezoning? And so what we did is we started to take these applications and rezone to be able to bring that growth to the city. And I think that's probably something that we need to consider for doing here in Sandy, in this particular area.
My 2 cents going back and kind of, I think from doing it for a number of years, not that anybody here else hasn't, but I know a couple people have, but over the years, we've been told that cost is not a decision-making criteria for us. And I appreciate Mr. Gambino coming in and saying this is what's kind of driving it and being honest about it. But again, I just wonder under I-1, what would be the cost difference to come in and ask, like you said, a variance for the roof and do it as I-1 without any variance changes on it? Because I think we're going to come up on the next one here tonight, another one on cost. Did it cost too much to do it this way? So when we're told that cost should not be a deciding factor, but it is kind of the deciding factor. So maybe it's more of philosophy. I want to see the jobs come in. I love the sound of the business and want to see it here. And again, I think all of us working together, we all have good intentions. We're just trying to sit here and what's the best marriage we can make with what we have. So
Can I add a point of clarification to that, just for the commission's sake?
Yeah.
So a lot of the times when you've heard that cost is not a consideration, that's in respect to the design review requirements and the variances that are being asked for those requirements. Tonight, you're getting a zone change. You're not being asked to consider the design elements. You're being asked to consider if the zone change is appropriate. And as Shelley went through, I thought pretty well, the criteria staff feel are all being met. And those criteria are what you're really evaluating tonight. And, costs can enter into that, but I think the reference that you made is a little bit different than what you're reviewing tonight.
Well, I guess to defend myself is I'm just referring back to what the applicant presented forward, and I appreciate him for his honesty. But I can make my decision based upon the criteria that you outlined, Kelly, and what Shelley presented. So.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to contradict anything. I'm just saying that I think some of the conversations we've had in the past are based on something slightly different than what you're seeing tonight as well.
Okay. Fair.
Hey, Jerry, Mike Ard, it looked like he raised his hand. It's up to you to decide if you want to recognize him or not.
I didn't catch that. And Mike, did you have some input you wanted?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit, and I recognize that this isn't necessarily 100% applicable to this application. It's more general for all applications. But as we began this process of deciding how to develop the site and whether to request a zone change or whether to request variances, there are decisions that the applicant needs to make at the outset regarding what are the risks and opportunities associated with multiple different paths to approval of a project, and what does the project look like at the end of the day. In this case, there are some considerations associated with cost, but I think the more significant issue is the question of certainty. And when we're requesting something that requires a variance, there is a great deal of uncertainty regarding whether that will be approvable or not. So we could have potentially come through with an I-1 application and said, here's what we want to do. Here's how we're trying to conform to the code in every way that we can. Here are the variances that we need. But we put ourselves in jeopardy by asking that question and leaving it up to a discretionary decision of, is this variance appropriate or approvable? And worse, if we get to an answer of no and then decide to pursue the zone change so that the variance is not necessary, it looks like we're trying to backdoor an approval that has already been denied. In this case, what we're trying to do is be extremely straightforward in letting you know exactly what we want, present exactly what the site's going to look like, provide you all the information so that in no way are we trying to hide or obscure anything, and recognizing exactly what those advantages are associated with this zone change. We do believe that we met the zone change approval criteria. That's why we would ask for approval, and obviously there are economic benefits to the city as well as the surrounding community associated with this approval. So that's kind of the reason that we went in the I-2 zone change direction as opposed to the variance direction. And I hope that sheds just a little bit of light on the sort of thinking prior to the application for you, Mr. Carlton.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Can I mention something? I'm raising my hand. I don't know how to do it on the computer. I never do that because they usually just allow us to go like this, other meetings that I've had. So, but anyhow.
Go ahead and complete it.
How to do that. But this is my question. When I first met with Joey, we went through that whole issue, whether we should keep the zoning, do the variances, and we came to the conclusion that justifying the variances would be a lot more difficult. And the second thing I think is really, really critical, if you look at the site plan, the existing zoning, the property directly to the southeast is already developed with new buildings, and it is zoned I-2. There's a little triangular piece adjacent to that. I don't know if anybody's looking at that map right now, but that I'm almost positive that little triangular piece is going to come in and probably rezone to I-2, and that leaves a very, very large chunk of contiguous piece of property that it would be zoned I-2. The second thing that's really, really important, if you look at the aerial photograph, those steeper pitch buildings are really for a lot smaller buildings. If you look at all the little buildings in the area, especially the one to the southeast, they're very small, and the footprint is very small. When you have a manufacturing facility that's very large, doing that pitched roof is very, very difficult. And that's really what the basis is. And so we just came to the conclusion that the rezoning, based on this area, based on what's existing out there already, that and almost all the property around it is all developed. So it just seemed logical. I realized that on the northwest
Jerry,
side.
we keep it open so they can answer questions, not lobbyists. So I think we need to.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
Okay, I thought I was able to do the rebuttal. So it's not the rebuttal yet then, right?
We're already past that.
We're past.
Oh, okay.
We're way past rebuttal.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but just trying to stay with our process. So I just suggest we move on, Jerry. We've all had a chance to talk.
We can go ahead and take a closure. Somebody
move. We close the public hearing.
I second it.
Okay, been moved by Don, seconded by Chris to close the public hearing at 7:50. All in favor, hands up. Okay, that's unanimous. All right. Yeah, it's as looking at it, just my take on it is that it's a case of having a lot of really helpful information, that's extra information that kind of clouds what we're supposed to be specifically looking at. And I know you commissioners that it's the kind of information we like to have because we're all very curious people. But I think that when Shelley went through what the decision criteria were, was helpful, and it's hard having all this other information out there kind of beckoning at our brains. It's hard to just focus down on what the decision criteria is that Don keeps mentioning and focusing us to. Because I've just thought, well, what if somebody just came in and just said, I would like to change the zoning on that lot. No proposal, nothing, just industrial from 1 to 2. What, you know, how would our discussion differ? I think we may, I don't know, we'd look back and say, well, when we did the zoning, such as what Chris said and Stephen has given input, and we kind of, okay, this area needs to be industrial, and we have a couple different categories, so let's put one here and one there. I don't know that there was any particular thought as to, you know, the lay of the land or whatever. So all that said, it's an easy, tough decision.
Yeah, can I raise one more point on that? I think Commissioner Hook was spot on in his analysis as far as I'm concerned, in the fact that when you look at a lot of these properties like this, you kind of think to yourself, how long have they been sitting vacant? I think that particular piece of lot, that particular property was, I believe, subdivided in the 1990s. And so it's sat vacant for over 20 years. I've been working here for 10 years now, and all the interest I've had on that property has been industrial, with like one exception of an individual that was thinking about putting commercial buildings on there. But I don't think that person had any ability to do so. I don't think the person that came to me had a bank loan or anything. So they weren't really that serious. They never even held a pre-app. So I only remember of one interested party that was looking to do like retail. And like I said, I don't think they had the financials to do it anyways. And, you know, I think one thing we need to realize is once 362nd is punched through to the north, we're going to have 120 acres of commercial. Now, is all that land going to be developed for commercial? No. There's no way it will be, especially with the pandemic and the changing economics behind commercial land. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I-1, for all intents and purposes, is commercial in the city of Sandy. It's the exact same zoning district as C2. And once we put in 362nd, we're going to have 120 other acres of it. Do we really need to be saving 2.5 acres for commercial I-1? Or do we want to see it actually be developed and hopefully create living wage jobs there? So that, I think that's where I'm kind of standing as the director, is like, there hasn't been any movement on this property in decades. We're finally seeing somebody interested. I want to create living wage jobs. And, you know, I think the ultimate goal for a lot of us with kids in town too, is for those kids to have a chance to continue to live here. And I think living wage jobs kind of promotes that. So for me, I look at it bigger than just what is the cost differential. I look at the criterion, and then I look even beyond that and say, what's best for the city of Sandy? And I would say that's creating living wage jobs. And as I said, I think we have 120 acres that will soon be open for retail and shopping. So I don't know why we need this 2.5 acres.
Jerry, if I can, and we'll go back more to Kelly, is I think I'm not a little bit taken back from the comments I made on it. Was it's as if I'm not behind it. Okay, I think I'm being misconstrued in what my words were coming out on it. In fact, I'd like to make the motion that we accept or to pass on for approval to the city council the approval of file number 20-041 ZC. I'm behind it. I think it's a great project. But again, bringing up again this thing that
Ron,
comes up.
can you add the additional conditions as identified in number 17 findings for that motion? And I'll second it for you.
Another, can I throw in another tweak that we just mentioned was, and Kelly may do it anyway, was clarification on that 20 feet when it goes from us to council. It doesn't really change anything, but.
Plus the two things noted by Chris and Jerry.
Okay. We need a second.
I second that.
Okay, it's been seconded by Chris that we send the motion or the proposal on to City Council with our approval, or our recommendation, adding the clarification on the 20 feet, just the wording of that. And the other one you mentioned, Chris, the conditions that staff mentioned, was there something beyond that, Chris? I forgot what.
It was in the recommendation. It was the conditions identified in finding number 17, which if you look at finding number 17, it was quite lengthy, so I didn't read it.
Okay, so that's as it was written in the staff report.
Right.
Okay. All right, been moved and seconded. We'll go with a roll call vote.
I'm sorry about that. Commissioner Carlton,
Yes.
Commissioner Lasowski,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean-Wenzel,
Yes.
Commissioner Hook,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayton,
Yes.
and Chairman Crosby.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you very much. Are we doing okay on?
I like to just real quick five.
Can we just do a 5-minute break?
Okay, quick little break. Be back at 5.
Okay, Mr. Gambino and Mr. O'Brien, we can connect with you later this week or next week, but the procedure here is going to be, we're going to do a revised staff report, and then you'll go to City Council and do your presentation again. But
I appreciate that.
You don't have to attend tonight any longer.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah, you can log off at this point.
Excellent.
All right. We'll move on to the next public hearing, which we will open at 8:04. This is file number 20-040, design review and variance, Sandy High School Field House. Any abstentions from the Planning Commission? Nothing seen. Any conflict of interest? Any Planning Commissioner? Again, nothing seen. Any ex parte contact that you need to state? Things are quiet. I don't see anything. Any challenges from the public to anybody on the Planning Commission or the Planning Commission itself? And as I've stated before, if you're attending via Zoom, you would, to raise your hand, click the raise hand icon or button. If you're on the phone, it's *9 and then wait to be recognized. Okay, if you testify, you must raise all issues you wish to address at this hearing. If your issue is not raised at this hearing, you may not be able to raise it later in any appeal. Your comment should state why the application should or should not be approved, or include your proposed modifications you believe are necessary for approval according to the standards. If you do not raise specific issues at the final evidentiary hearing or by close of the record, or fail to provide statements or evidence to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal the decision to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that particular issue. Any party may request that the hearing be continued to a later date or that the record remain open after the hearing is closed. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. And with that, Emily, is this your project?
Yes, it is.
All right, we turn it over to you for staff report.
All right, I will share my screen. And, all right, so we're looking at the Sandy High School Fieldhouse proposal tonight. I think you're all probably pretty aware of where the high school is located, but it's bound here on the east with Bluff Road, and then Highway 26 is down here in the lower left-hand corner. The proposed site for the field house is this red area, so it's just east of the ball fields. So the request is to construct a new indoor athletic facility, which is a field house batting cage facility on the campus. The proposed building is a 50-foot by 70-foot pre-engineered steel building, and it's proposed to be located over a portion of the existing parking area east of the ball fields. And then there's additional site work that would include conversion of the existing parking spaces to landscaped areas and construction of pedestrian paths and a crosswalk. They're also asking for 3 special variances. The first is to exceed the 30% metal on the building's facade. The second is to provide a reduced roof pitch of 4 to 12 instead of the required 6 to 12. And the third is to not meet the 30% window requirement on the activated frontage of the building. So just to go over a few of the applicant's submittals. So this is the submitted site plan. Here in the rectangle shows where the building would go. So the parking area has to be a little bit reconfigured. In yellow here, kind of the new reconfigured landscape islands. And then there's a new proposed crosswalk that connects the existing internal walkway system to the new proposed building. Here are the elevations that were provided. So the main entrances are on the west and the south elevation, which are the top 2 there. And then here's a couple of renderings. So this is looking at that west elevation. And then this is just a slightly different angle looking at that west elevation. So I'm just going to go over a few of the design elements here. The first is the pedestrian shelters. So our code requires pedestrian shelters over any primary entrance. They need to be 5 feet in depth. And the code prefers that shelters be designed with gables over flat shelters. On the rendering, as you can see, the applicant's proposing single sloped roofs and not gables. Staff did a site visit and saw that many of the other accessory buildings near the ball fields have gabled roofs, like the one in the middle picture there. And there's also a section of the code that requires architectural unity. So again, you know, the code prefers gables over flat roof shelters and does want architectural unity. The image on the far right there is the last approved accessory building on the site. That was in 2014, and that's a building that's over near Bluff Road. So we had added a condition that the applicant update the south and west elevations to detailed gabled roofs over the 2 building entrances that are seen there on the south and west entrances or elevations. And per the code, the gabled roofs would need to be designed in compliance with section 1790-120C, which is the roof pitch section, and they would need to extend at least 5 feet over the pedestrian area. And then jumping into the 3 special variance requests. The first is percent metal. So in section 1790-120B3D4, it says where metal siding is used, it shall be used as an accent only, comprising not more than 30% of the surface area of the building elevation. In this case, the applicant is requesting approval to allow metal siding on 100% of the surface area of the building elevations. The second special variance request is to roof pitch. So the code 1790-120C1, which pertains to roof pitch, requires pitched roofs on all new buildings with a span of 50 feet or less. And again, this building is 50 by 70, so it would require the pitched roof. And the pitched roof for the primary roof form would need to be 612 minimum. And the applicant's requesting a reduced roof pitch of 412. And then finally, the third special variance request is 2% windows. So in 1790-120E2, it requires that the ground floor elevation of new buildings contain windows on the activated frontage, and for buildings less than 10,000 square feet, the requirement is that windows are on 30% of the elevation. Another code section that's relevant is section 1790-120I, which contains the standards related to safety and security, and that requires window placement that enables visibility between the building interior and exterior pedestrian and parking areas. So the applicant's request is to not provide windows on any of the elevations. We received one public comment, and I included a little excerpt here. The public comment said, or a portion of it said, at all times, and especially when sports season is upon us, the area of the proposed development will be in the public view for our local citizenry, students, and for visitors who come to support their sports players from outside areas. Why not invest in a building that will meet the codes and continue the sense of pride in our community? So I think this is getting at, you know, how some of our code sections relate to being visible from a public street. I think this is sort of highlighting, rightly so, that even if it's not visible from a public street, this area may still be highly visible. I know I used to run at the track a lot, and I think probably there's a lot of high schoolers from other high schools in the area that come here to play sports or watch sports. So I think the public comment was just kind of pointing out that this is still a fairly visible area. And so to consider, you know, what the code would require, because they are asking for the 3 special variances. So the staff recommendation is we are recommending approval with the conditions of approval as outlined in the draft report. And for all of the special variance requests, to meet special variance criteria A, the Planning Commission would need to make a determination that the intent and purpose of the regulations and of the provisions to be waived will not be violated, and that granting the special variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare and will not be injurious to other property in the area when compared with the effects of development otherwise permitted. So that is what needs to be determined in all 3 cases to meet that special variance criteria. And then looking specifically at each of them, for percent metal, we recommend the Planning Commission consider the submitted public testimony and the intent of section 1790-120B, which is the building materials section, in formulating your decision. And we are recommending that Planning Commission consider allowing the 100% metal on the less visible facades, which would be the north and east, but not necessarily allowing 100% metal on the west and south elevations. For roof pitch, we're just recommending, again, that you consider the public testimony and then the intent of section 1790-120C, which is the roof pitch section. And we don't have anything more specific in terms of a recommendation for that one. And then for percent windows, we are again recommending you consider the submitted public testimony and then the intent of both sections 1790-120E, which pertains to windows, and section 1790-120I, which pertains to safety and security in making your decision. And we are recommending that the Planning Commission consider requiring windows on the west elevation, which is that kind of main elevation from the rendering where you saw there's the main entrance and a bench and kind of a pedestrian area along the entirety of that west elevation. So that concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you, Emily. Any immediate questions of any commissioner? Okay, we will move on to the applicant's presentation. Remember to state your name and your address for the record.
I can start. Bryce Bailey, 31520 Southeast Hamlet Drive in Boring, Oregon. I am the president of Sandy Pioneer Baseball. Over the past decade, Sandy Pioneer Baseball has raised a significant amount of funds to build a field house on the facility. As many of you have known, one of the things lacking at Sandy High School is a field house. I've gone to pretty much every other 6A school around our region, and unfortunately our athletes do not have this available. It would serve baseball, softball, track, and it's really just needed in the community. I've spent thousands of hours at that field, and with Jim Seipel's advice, it's in the perfect location. It's tucked in. It isn't very visible, and I'm going to step back for a second. This is the 5th project I've done with Jones Architecture. We built 2 buildings downtown Gresham, pediatric therapy services. And I've gone through the Gresham process several times. This is the first time through the Sandy. And I could have had 200 people in line for public testimony. And in the future, if you'd like, that would be great. But we'd really just like to make our presentation and get your thoughts on what you would like to have improved. So Sienna, would you like to start?
Sure, thanks, Bryce. And thank you all for being here on a Monday evening and hearing about our proposal.
Name and address?
Yeah, my name is Sienna Shiga, and I'm with Jones Architecture. Our office address is 120 Northwest 9th Avenue, Suite 210, Portland, Oregon 97209.
Thank you.
And like Bryce mentioned, we've worked with Bryce on a number of projects, and he asked us to help out with this the field house. And I think a couple of the things that I just wanted to talk about are how we initially thought of the design of the building and considered it. It is a pre-engineered steel building, so the structure will be a steel building. And we're proposing a metal skin on the building, so a metal panel and a metal roof. And part of where that's coming from is certainly cost, and making this affordable and something that this organization can actually get built. But we also think there's some value and some advantage in having the building be kind of speak to its true nature. So keeping it a very simple form, a very utilitarian form, and letting it be kind of a backdrop to the facility, to the campus, and then potentially introducing some kind of graphic element that could give it some identity. So really speak to its nature as a part of the school. So we looked at doing something that was simple and elegant and reflects the purpose of the building. And then I think, like Emily mentioned, and I think what we read in your findings too, was that the context of this building is really the campus itself and not the neighborhood. It's very shielded from the neighborhood by really tall banks of trees and bushes, and then it opens up onto the campus and the outbuildings by the sports fields. So you know, we went and looked at those buildings and the high school itself, and kind of took cues from those buildings when we were thinking about how to respond with this building. Can I share my screen for just a moment? That'd be all right.
Yep, somebody can make it happen.
Oh, I've got it. Just wanted to get some permission here. Okay, can you guys see?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to share some photos that we took of the campus. The high school, I think is a really nice building. I hope you all like it too. I think it's elegant and modern, but also really kind of fits in with Sandy and the Sandy architecture. So I really enjoyed thinking about how this building could relate to that building. And then these are 3 of the outbuildings that are right near this proposed facility. And they're very simple. To me, they are very unified in their palette. They're not kind of mixing different materials. It's kind of a single move with a big striking roof form. So these were kind of the cues that we were looking to, and then also we're looking here for palette. So you know, a lot of the kind of accessory structures are black and painted black, And then there's these kind of warm gray tones and dark gray tones to these buildings. So that's what we looked to when we were proposing our palette here. And again, trying to keep things simple and speak to the nature of the building, which is a hitting facility. So metal panel, and then just when you do an understated building, I think the devil's in the details. And so having some carefully selected light fixtures that are also black and go with the surroundings, I think are important. And then this is the rendering that Emily shared. So I think I want to speak to the variances that we're requesting. The first one being to do all metal. And I think, like I was saying, that fitting with the other buildings, the other outbuildings is really critical for being unified with its surroundings, which I know is the intent of the zoning code, and keeping a single palette, and being really true to the purpose of being a very utilitarian. It's really a shell for hitting, and so just keeping it really true to that purpose, and then allowing, like I said, some kind of identity for the students and the community to use as kind of a symbol of the school. And then the other one was a roof pitch, and I think this is very much a cost-driven variance. There is a huge difference in a 412 metal building roof and a 612 metal building roof. So cost is the primary consideration here, but it's also keeping it at this height keeping it at this pitch reduces the overall height, and therefore any impact that it would have to the surrounding neighborhoods. And we were really looking at trying to minimize that, so that the context really is the school. And then the third one is the window variance, and that is simply because it doesn't make sense to have windows in this building. It doesn't serve its function at all. I understand about the safety and security, and so I think we wanted to propose, I think it would make sense to add a half light in the door, in both doors perhaps, for safety and security, to address that concern. And I think that was kind of the conclusion of what I had to share. Bryce, do you have any other thoughts that you want to add on?
Not at this time, as I think you put it together pretty well. It's just putting together a facility to serve our youth in the upcoming decades. And I started this 3 years ago, and by the time it gets built, my kids actually probably won't be here anymore. They'll be graduated. It's just been an ongoing process, and it takes a lot of steps to get to this point, as all of you know. So I greatly appreciate your time, and really value your ideas and suggestions.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to assume that that's the conclusion of the applicant's presentation. All right, we will move on to the public testimony. And as I've said before, if you are in the audience, whether by Zoom or by telephone, if you wish to speak, if you're on Zoom, click the raise hand icon, and that will get you recognized. If you're on the phone, it is *9 to raise your hand, and then wait to be recognized by Kelly. We'll be calling for testimony in 3 sections. First, those who are in favor of the proposal, then those who are not in favor of the proposal, and finally, for those who just have a neutral position and have a comment to put into the record. So with no further ado, we'll move into the proponent testimony. If you are in favor of the proposal and wish to speak tonight, either click your raise hand icon or *9 on your phone, and be sure when you start speaking, after Kelly has recognized you, to give us your name and your address for the record.
I have somebody with their hand raised by the name of, they've identified themselves as Jen. So as Chairman Crosby just said, please say your whole name for the record, because I won't know what that is based just on Jen. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jen Mine, and
Yes.
my address is 37573 Coral Burst Street. That's in Sandy. It's actually one street over from the high school. And I also am on the board with Bryce. I'm the vice president for Sandy Pioneer Baseball. And this has been a project that we have been working on for years. I mean, my kids have already graduated and I'm still working on the project. It's a community center. It's a way for us to allow our kids to come together. It's not just for the baseball kids. It's not just for softball girls. It's not for the track. It's for all athletes at the school. It's a way to keep our kids still practicing, still, you know, participating in all of those great things that our school has to offer. So I obviously 100% in favor of it. And, I hear people talk about, well, we need to keep it pretty. We need to keep it looking great because it's part of the school. Like I said, I live one street over from the high school and we can't see it. It's not something that we're going to see on a daily basis and go, oh, that's an eyesore just because it's a metal building. This is something that, I don't know, we should all be proud of. We've worked very hard to come this far to get it going and, really appreciate your guys' support.
Thank you.
Okay, give me a second here. I have to do several things. Okay, the next person up is Michelle, and I'm sorry if I pronounced your name correctly, but Michelle Alsop, I believe that's how you say it. Oh, it's not letting me. Hold on. Okay, now you should be allowed to speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, Michelle Alsop. My address is P.O. Box 891, Sandy, Oregon, 97055. I'm also on the board. I've been involved with the baseball community for over 10 years, with the youth all the way up to the high school. And we have, like Jen and Bryce said, we've worked really hard on this. And I appreciate your guys' time and hope you guys take this in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, give me a second here. Trying to do multiple things at once here. Okay. Yeah, if you go to a council meeting, Jeff Aprati has this all dialed in. I'm a little bit sluggish at it.
You're doing great.
Okay, I do not see anybody else with their hands raised.
Okay, we'll move on to opponent testimony. If you are not in favor of the proposal, you've heard the routine. Raise hand button or *9. Wait to be recognized.
I do not see anybody with their hands raised.
Okay, and finally for neutral testimony, if you're neither a proponent or opponent, neither for or against, but just have a comment to make on the proposal, now is the time to hit that raise hand button or *9 on your phone.
Okay, I have one hand raised. It's by Counselor Kathleen Walker. I'm going to allow her to speak now. And please remember to state your name and address to the record.
Hi, thank you. This is Kathleen Walker, 15920 Southeast Bluff Road, Sandy, Oregon. I wanted to know, first of all, is this something that you guys are approving or, or approving with conditions or whatever tonight? Or is this something that is a recommendation that's going to the city council? Can you clarify that for me, process-wise, anybody?
It's a decision by the planning commission. It's a type 3 application.
Thank you.
It would only come before the city council on appeal.
Right. Great. Thank you. So, yeah, I live in the neighborhood like the other woman, and it's a great thing to have this, these volunteers working so hard to kind of benefit the baseball teams there at Sandy High and possibly the softball team. I'm not quite sure or understanding how it's going to benefit any of the other sports teams. That wasn't, I guess, made clear, but maybe I missed that part. But what I was just kind of wondering about is the whole metal pole barn design thing is something that you've probably heard from me before that, we're trying to kind of get away from. And so to the extent that I realize it does, cost a little bit more money to put some, the fake stone around the bottom a little bit and have some roof overhangs and things like that. But that is kind of a concern to me that it not just look like a big metal pole barn, because it is going to be something that we're going to be living with for the next 40 to 50 years. And it's not just, it's not totally hidden or anything like that. It's a pretty big building. It's visible from the homes along Bluff Road there. And then obviously for all of us that walk around the campus there. Again, it's a great project to have it, and I'm really excited about having the opportunity for them to have that. But I do have some, concerns that if we can kind of get a little bit closer to meeting the, and I think Emily did a good job of kind of coming up with some conditions. I agree that having, maybe having the percent of metal, compromised on the less visible sides and things like that seems prudent. I think having the overhangs, I think one of the concerns I have is kind of, there seems to be, every few years when I kind of, we keep seeing new buildings around the high school campus there, and they're small buildings or whatever, they're usually sports oriented and stuff. And so it'd be nice to just kind of have more of a master plan of like what other buildings are kind of coming down the pike that we need for that area in the future, just to have a little bit better thought out plan. I am a little concerned about the setback from where the cars are coming out there to the building. That seems really close, and maybe it's just a scale on the map, but just from a safety standpoint, that's kind of just something to really look at. But yeah, I just would like to say, it's a neat thing to have all these volunteers work so hard to make this happen. I just want to see that, for the folks that are in the neighborhood or just, using the campus quite a bit and really concerned about, how that whole campus looks and have some cohesiveness. I do agree with some of the, the standards that Emily already put forward. And also I would just ask, something a little bit beyond that to kind of get away from the metal pole barn looking thing, because honestly, that's, from the pictures that I've seen so far, that's kind of what it looks like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on. Okay, I do not see any other hands raised. So I think you're good to move on.
Okay. Well, we'll toss it over to you, Emily, for any recap and recommendation.
Right. I don't have a whole lot, but I do want to point out that our code, so in that chapter 1791-20, there are some elements of the design standards that are tied to visibility from the street. For example, like the stone base or like the 3 Sandy style elements that would need to be on a street facing facade. So they're not having to meet those ones because it's not visible from the street based on the line of sight analysis they submitted. But the 3 special variance requests that they asked for are to 3 sections of the code where it's not tied to visibility from a public right of way. I think the public comments, and I think what Ms. Walker also brought up, just right now during the testimony are noting that the building still would be visible. But again, those 3 criteria aren't really tied to the visibility. So I'm specifically talking about the percent metal, the roof pitch, and the percent windows. So those are 3 special variance requests. As I mentioned before, you would need to really think about the intent of the code when making a determination on that in order to meet that special variance criteria A. I think the only other thing, Ms. Walker had asked a question about the setback to parking from the building. I just checked the site plan and it meets our code. I don't have an exact measurement, but it looks like it's maybe 10 feet by that the main entry on the western facade to where the 2 new proposed parking spaces are there. And on the south side, there's not a pedestrian way that goes the whole way that I can tell from the site plan where the cars would turn around. But our code for the parking adjacent to walkways, they would need to be 7 feet so that it's meeting that standard in terms of safety. And I do believe they have wheel stops at those 2 that are adjacent to the walkway as well. I can't answer the questions about what other sports how other sports would benefit from the field house. It sounded to us like it was just batting cages for baseball and softball.
I can actually answer that one real quick. It's
Just a minute, you'll have an opportunity.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And I think that is all that I have. I don't know if Kelly has anything else.
Yeah, I just had a couple kind of procedural things. Nothing really. Just I think the staff report does a pretty good job of laying out our recommendation. We, as staff, we understand some of the sentiment from Ms. Jenkins, who submitted the public testimony, who, as many of you know, used to be a planning commissioner. So that was kind of fun to hear from her on something, or what Ms. Walker spoke to. We didn't have a real strong feeling as staff, so that's why we left a lot of the recommendations kind of just open to planning commission's interpretation. We did try to give some guidance on a couple of them, and I think some of that guidance stems from past decisions that were recently made. So if you remember on Sandy Vault storage facilities, they actually made a pretty good point, I think, that there was a few of the walls that like faced internal retaining walls and were not going to be very visible, and they asked for metal siding on those walls. And I think the planning commission overall and staff felt pretty comfortable with recommending metal on those walls, that it was like, yeah, they're facing a retaining wall, or yeah, they're not going to be visible for many people. So we did want to give a little bit of guidance on the north and east wall to be all metal, because we don't feel like it would be detrimental to anybody. And then the only other things I wanted to really bring up is that just for the public's information and for the applicants, just a couple of clarity points. The presentation from Ms. Shiga, that will need to be submitted into the record since that was presented tonight. And so you can just send that to Emily after the meeting. So we'll want that for the record in case anybody from the public wants to see a copy of that. And then the only other part I wanted to bring up, and it was something that was actually raised by Mr. Carlton in a conversation with him that I had, is that the large SP on one of the building sides, I think it's actually kind of a cool look. Personally, it's kind of like a cool logo look. However, that will actually have to be processed as a sign permit, I'm pretty sure, because that's what it is a sign. Unfortunately, because of our sign code right now, it goes off of square footage of wall and then square footage of sign. So I don't think that design is most likely going to be allowed. I wish I had a different answer for you there, but I don't think that will likely be allowed unless you go through another variance procedure. And unfortunately, you can't ask the planning commission tonight because they don't oversee the sign code. So it had to be a variance procedure through the city council. But I did want to just bring up tonight that large SP, while I think it's kind of cool, like I said, but it doesn't actually meet the municipal code, I don't believe, for wall signage. But we can discuss that more aside after this meeting. But I just wanted to kind of raise that in case anybody's wondering. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. And now, Bryce and Sienna, you have opportunity for rebuttal to respond to anything you've heard so far.
Mine's pretty quick. It's the interior of the building, even with batting cages in, they'll roll back and forth. It's 3,500 square feet. As many of you have experienced, our winters are very cold and our sports are outdoors, and it does give an indoor training facility to all sports, so it will be useful.
And I just wanted to comment on the sign permit. That thank you for bringing that up, Kelly. I hadn't thought of that. I think our response to that is that the intent of the graphic, so the kind of big super graphic paint paint articulation can be done in a way that isn't I think wouldn't be considered a sign. So some other things we thought about were potentially having something like baseball stats or something that can be stenciled onto the side of the building, and be kind of speak to the use of the building. So I think I'll leave it at that. I do think that most of what I presented before is still true in light of what we heard just now.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Chairman Crosby, before we jump into your discussion, can I just ask our attorney's office, just so people on the call and for the applicant's benefit too, it's a lot cheaper for me to get David's input right now than to call him up tomorrow morning. I'm already paying him right now. So David, can you give us a little bit of all this First Amendment violation stuff makes sign code very difficult. And so if they're putting any wording or any graphics on the side of the building, would you consider that a sign or not?
Most likely. I mean, I think it's important to kind of caution that since that is technically a separate process, for better or worse, that we wait to really dive into that until we have something in front of us that's concrete. And frankly, I can take a look at the sign code because it's been a while that I've done that. But by and large, it's anything that is meant to sort of communicate a message of any type, and it's very tricky when you get into what most of us would consider really just artwork, and not using letters per se, but or numbers, but just images. But you're right that it's particularly in Oregon a very difficult exercise, considering how the Oregon Supreme Court has interpreted Oregon's version of the First Amendment in its constitution. So by and large, anything that is meant to communicate through the visual medium is generally going to be considered a sign. That's correct. For the purposes of regulation.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Fortunately, we don't have to delve into that tonight. All right. Go into our discussion time, and we will keep the public hearing open, but only for us to ask a question of Bryce or Sienna, should it come up. It's not an opportunity for further discussion. Before we focus our attention on the three variances, does anybody have some other issue besides those that you want to mention that we should discuss?
I don't know. Well, I guess it is the variances. I don't know, Jerry, how to say it, but first of all, I really support, the baseball program, and I know booster clubs and what they do. And it sounds like the facility is not being paid for by the school district. It sounds like it's being paid for by the boosters. That wasn't clarified. But, it's just, there's a couple of things I think that I just need to say. The school district is no different than anybody else. And when you start a project, just like if you were a private business, you would start by looking at the code. And we get private businesses that have completely complied by the code and built their buildings and not said a word. Others have come in with reasons, et cetera. So that's the key thing I want to point out. It's got nothing to do with Sandy baseball. It's got nothing to do with anything other than if the governmental entities don't work hard to go by the code, it's really hard for us to look at private enterprise, and basically doing it now. What I think, I'll give you personally, I'm okay with the pitch roof change. I understand how that works. On the windows, my concern, it would be more related to fire code, and I leave that to the fire department to make sure that, there's two ways to get out of that place, at least on opposite ends of the place, or whatever. I understand that, and of course, full windows are available. All you gotta do is look at what's on the Tractor Supply store, and they don't necessarily need to be highly expensive. So the windows are window looking. The key thing, I think, is the metal, and I think, because of, I think Kelly mentioned it, some around here on the commission have gone through several applicants from public storage, and public storage, you've seen them, can easily be built just with a metal building. Just, you see them all the time. And decisions we've made in the past, we've said, yeah, if you can't see it, you can do metal. If not, you're going to meet the code. And a whole lot less people are going to see that, because they're going to be people who have rented a public storage and actually be in there, than would actually be visiting the high school and be on the property. So I think it's just important that the Booster Club and the district recognize the importance of that. And I think staff has made a good recommendation that on the north, or not be the west side and the south side, that the code be followed, at least in terms of the percent of metal. That's, I think, the biggest thing. And if they were to do that, I would be okay with the pitch roof being less. And I understand the kind of issues kind of with the windows, but I could let that one slide too. But as a minimum, I think they should comply with the code when it comes to the metal, and 30% being the code on those two facades.
Okay, you got us going on the variances there, Don. Other commissioners' input, and it can be the same. You can say I agree.
Sure, I'll jump in real quick. I'm almost with Don all the way. I agree totally on the building metal. It should be only allowed on two faces, unvisible. The other two should follow the code. I am indifferent to the roof pitch whatsoever. On the windows, I differ a little bit from Don. I think that building is much larger than the other buildings that are on the property now that don't have windows. And I think that you could install windows at least at the roof line for natural lighting, even if not for visibility, just for aesthetics. It could be used in a more visual way. Besides that, I'd also like to say thank you to the group. I was excited to see this proposal come in. I'm in full support of getting a field house on the property. I have 4 daughters. 3 of them have graduated from Sandy. One's still going. They're not going to see the likes of this, but I definitely see this as being a benefit to our community, and I would love to have it. I would just like to see it match the architecture that's put on the Sandy High School itself. I lived only blocks away while we built that building, and I love the way it looks. I would like the outhouses around it to look the same. So I would only ask that you find a way to make the metal siding be on the hidden portions and put 2 facings with the right amount. As I said, the roof I'm indifferent to, but I believe the windows, and I will go as far to say I would, once I see a better development of window space, I would probably allow a variation from the existing window code. I just don't want to see a 50-foot run of no window. I think it would look better if you could incorporate that into it. that's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Hollis? You're muted, Hollis.
Sorry, on the coattails of Ron and Don, yeah. So, yeah, I've had 6 kids graduate from Sandy High. I love the sports programs there. They made a huge difference to my kids, and I'm super excited to see a field house in the works. I also would be fine with changing the pitch on the building and metal on the 2 sides. I think it was the north and east sides that wouldn't be as visible. But on the entrance sides or the south and west sides, I'd really like to see the code followed. We've got such a beautiful campus. And if we start putting up just sheer metal buildings, then, you know, then another club is going to want a metal building because that's what they can afford. And I'd really hate to see us start, you know, just putting buildings up like that. I do appreciate the colors you've used. The color palette makes me sad to think you couldn't have a great big S&P on there. I think it's a great idea. But I would like to see more of this style elements. The pitched over the awning, the awnings over the doors, I think should be pitched. And then the last thing is the windows. You know, the school has done so much to incorporate natural light, and it saves on electricity. And I really thought that idea of windows up around the top could help a lot with that. But I'm also concerned about safety and security. And I'd like to see some kind of window element somewhere where near the doors, so that when we've got kids coming and going, you know, it's dark so much of the year when they're there at practice, when they come out. So that was a security issue for me, safety issue. That's all.
Stephen?
I have a question. What is to the north of the building and the east?
Emily?
Would you like me to answer that?
No, Emily can.
Okay.
I believe it's, so to the north is the parking lot for the church. And then east, I think, is just a backyard to a property, but both the north and the east there are lined with vegetation, so they're screened.
And is any of the property surrounding this undeveloped or waiting to, you know, to be sold for development?
No.
Not that I know of, but I mean, I suppose anybody could come in. I mean, the church could come in and redevelop if they wanted, or that property owner to the east, in theory. I don't know what it's zoned, but they could redevelop, certainly at least with a duplex. We know, we'll find out in the next meeting or in the next topic, but and not on the horizon that we know of, but really redevelopment can happen at any point.
Yeah, Ron?
Just kind of going through the 3 checklists. Again, the roof pitch, I'm perfectly fine with. No problem there at all. And in terms of the windows, I'd like to see something again to keep in line with our design standards. They could be faux at minimal cost to do that, or they could even incorporate natural light into the building, which I think is another great idea. But again, that might go against the functionality of it. But again, faux windows would meet that. And in terms of the metal siding, I think that's probably the biggest rub, as everybody has said. And I'd like to propose that we could up the percentage of metal that's allowable and look towards that, and then maybe some other cost-effective base materials down low with some stone to come in there. Again, I think we all want to work with the folks putting together to minimize costs, but at the same time, we can't kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater here and just say it's okay. Because it's a field house that's there. I think Hollis brought up a good point, just to respect the integrity of the high school itself. It would be hard just to put up a kind of a pole barn. But again, I think we definitely come up and work with the ratios of metal to make it more affordable on that. Anyway, that's fine.
Okay. Trying to remember if everybody.
How about you, Jerry?
Yep. What did you say, Ron?
How about you?
Well, yeah, I was just waiting to make sure everybody else had. I'm very much in line with everybody. I haven't heard anybody speak against the roof pitch, so I won't join the opposing group on that. I believe at least if the picture was of a 412, it appeared fine to me. I share the same current concern on the metal. And I appreciate staff's recommendation on the two sides. Ron, I think you're right, that just something to make it look a little bit and not look like a tractor barn. And what Hollis has said also, that, you know, when you walk on the campus and people are saying, wow, that is a beautiful school and so forth, I think that they see it all as one thing. So the desire to maintain the code for the appearance of the building is not out of order, in the keeping with the general design and niceness of the high school. Not necessarily to match it, but I think there's something to be said for that. On the windows, I would personally go more with requiring real windows, and they could just be screened on the inside. There's going to be protection set up somehow in there, because it's not just an open room with people batting balls hilly-nilly all over the place. And I say that for a couple of things. One is to make the building look more not like a tractor barn, but also just for the natural daylight. It's just, and a glaze on the door, I don't think is sufficient. I think that you could put windows along that wall, and it would just put light into the building. Light is kind of nice to have in our dark winters, which is when a lot of baseball players are getting their practice in and so forth. So I don't know, where to go with that as far as what specifically to require on the condition. Faux windows would work, but I think probably just as expensive to put in a real window and just put a cage on the inside of some sort.
Yeah.
We are into our discussion, so the applicant is, unless we ask you a question, we're discussing. Somebody else, was it Don?
I just can't remember, somebody, maybe it was Hollis that mentioned that, or maybe it was Ron, that we think of windows in this traditional sense, but windows up higher, just below, would get light in and would give you a kind of a, the effect, as opposed to this standard window. So, I mean, I kind of like that idea. I mean, I just said on windows, I'm willing to go either way. It sounds like most of the people want windows. So I'm fine, with windows, but we're not here tonight to I don't think, to design. We're here with the variances. Mm-hmm. And so I suggest that we kind of look at what staff has recommended. I think that's quite a bit in line with what we're kind of saying, as opposed to trying to say, well, maybe the metal could be 50 or whatever. I don't think we should go there. The code specifies it, and if they want to do something other than the code, they can come back again. But what we are saying is that 100 isn't the right answer. 100% metal is not the right answer.
Okay.
Can I chime in here for 1 second? I don't, just so you know, I mean, you can approve the variances how you wish. The one nuance I do want to bring up is that if you specify windows, which is fine, I think what you should most likely do is just state that on those two sides of the building, to give Emily and I a percentage to work with the applicant on. I would prefer not to say windows up high because I don't, and Emily, you can tell me I'm wrong here. You know the design code as good as I do at this point. But I don't think like high windows would actually be even allowed in our code. I think the windows have to be like balanced in the middle of the building. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Like there's supposed to be a certain amount of feet off the ground and then a certain amount. So not trying to say that high design windows wouldn't be a good thing for natural light, but I don't know if it would even be in line with our development code. So if you do go that road, I would just like to get some clarity on that. And also we would prefer percentages because it's just kind of easy to work with that. But you know, it's your guys' decision, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Chair, I saw Steve's hand up.
Okay, Steve, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the code for the variances does call out in section A that the circumstances necessitating the variance are not of the applicant's making. And in this case, they are requesting a variance because of affordability, rather than a hardship that the code has placed on the developable land, for instance. And so I think we need to take that into consideration.
Took it right out of my mouth. I've said that before, I remember. Thanks, Steve. Well, the way we have it, Jerry, it just seems to me like the motion would be to deny the variance for the, well, on the first one is on the building. You know, the motion would be the two sides fine. The other side, we would deny the variance, you know, go with the code. And then sound like we'd approve the second variance on the roof pitch. And then on the third, that we would basically deny the variance because they don't want to put any windows up.
Yeah, I don't know if that's entirely right. Can you?
If you talk about the windows specifically, staff recommended they only go on the west side. As I spoke about it, it was about just putting windows in, and I would be more flexible to how much space it incorporated in the entirety of the building. So I feel like there's more discussion we would need to have around that before I could vote a direction on it.
Okay, David?
Just one quick comment. I think it's important to clarify, and certainly staff, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Commissioner Hook had brought up the issue a moment ago about the variance and the criteria, that it's basically not of the applicant's making, the hardship, which is true, and that is a pretty typical variance criteria. But Sandy's development code, which probably many of you remember from prior experience, does have you have two separate variance procedures that an applicant can elect to use. And I believe in this case, the applicant's going under this special variance that the code has, which doesn't necessarily, and this is where I'd want staff to jump in if I'm getting this part wrong, but that's the way I read the staff report. Doesn't necessarily look to whether it's a hardship or not, but it is more based on, as the report describes, whether the intent and the purpose of the standard at issue is being violated, and whether there's going to be a detriment to the public welfare if you were to approve it.
You're correct.
So it's a little bit of a different, frankly, I think a more flexible, lenient standard than would normally be the case for variances, and Commissioner Hook is absolutely right. I think in general terms, variances are something, or the applicant has to show that, hey, something that's not within my control is limiting or completely prohibiting my use of this property, and I can't comply with the standard at issue. But the special variance procedure is a little bit different, and you have dealt with it, previously. So I think the key, maybe with the window as an example, is looking to whether the intent can be satisfied with what's being proposed, and if it means that, well, not having any windows wouldn't be consistent with the intent. I think that maybe that's where you get into what Kelly was saying about perhaps some percentage and maybe some guidance as to where those would be located. Those are just my thoughts on that really specific issue.
Yeah, you're correct. This is a special variance, so the criterion don't have to do with the hardship or the unique circumstance clause that's in the type 2, I guess what I'd call regular variance procedure that most cities have, that we also have, but that's not what they applied for tonight. So we do have to reference the special variance criterion.
Kelly, can I ask you a question, or Emily? It's in regards to the trying to move this thing along in terms of the windows. So we're basically taking away 2 sides of the building that are going to require windows. Am I right?
They would only need windows on one side. So our code requires windows on the activated frontage, and in 1790-120, that's just one side. In C1, it would be 2 sides, but this is different. So.
Okay, and then Emily, on that, I was getting up to what's the minimum percentage of windows?
30%. And it could in theory actually be any facade. Well, it would have to meet to be activated, it would have to have a pedestrian entry. So it could be the west or the south. As staff, we recommended the west because that's sort of the slightly more activated one in terms of visibility. It has the bench there. So we took that as kind of the main entrance and sort of, went with that for our recommendation. You could in theory choose the south too.
And if you do go with the west recommendation, I think everybody quickly realizes that it's going to be less windows than the south since it's a shorter wall.
Mm-hmm.
And
So anyway, just to wrap up my thought on it was to come back, have that one activated side. If it's 30%, maybe we could come down to 20%, and still get some light in there. I'm trying to come up with what I heard. I think maybe it was Jerry looking for some specifics so we can make a motion on. Anyway, that's what I'm trying to belong towards, or some more specifics. I'm sorry, Hollis. I'm done.
I am just going to go back to the safety and security issues of windows, and I liked the idea of the high windows just for the light aspect of it. But in terms of safety and security, if we're going to reduce the percentage of windows, I don't feel comfortable going below the 30% on the activated walls. And in particular, I want to make sure that there's windows near doors. And that's really a safety issue. We're going to have young men and young women going in and out those doors, and it's going to be dark. And I really would like to see people able to see what's outside the door. So.
Good.
Mm-hmm. Here, I just had a quick question. I can't find my notes. The garage door side of that building, is that the west face?
No, that's the south.
That's the south face. Okay.
I understand I understand the west being what it is, but it's the end of the building. And mentally, we don't think of the end of the building as the front of the building. You follow me? So, I'm looking at the other side. I'm looking where the parking is. And it seems to me like they're kind of equal, but there's more openings on the south side. The west side just got a little door over on the far left, according to the diagram.
And maybe just throw one out there and mix it up a little bit to get more light in on the south and west. Maybe we could go down to 20% of 2 sides were done or something like that to try to spread them out. Okay. So I'm just trying to get something out here that we can make a motion on to move on.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with just the activated side being the short side, and and requiring windows just on that side. But I did have one question, and this is probably for David. I'm looking at the code for the special variance criteria. It seems to be two parts. One is that we determined that the intent and purpose of the regulations will not be violated. So that's an intent. And then there's the word and. And it says, and that granting the special variance will not be material detrimental to the public welfare and will not be injurious to other property in the area when compared to the effects of development otherwise permitted. When I'm looking at, if we say no windows, I don't know, I'm just speaking personally, how I could say that that's not going to be material detrimental to public welfare. Or, and the other thing, that's a very, it's a very tough little criterion to use and to have to use. But it's kind of easy to, we've been focusing on the intent side, you know, say, well, the intent of windows is to let light and to make it look, you know, pedestrian friendly and so forth. And so it's easy to follow that. But then I look at that second part and say, I've got to say that it's not going to materially be detrimental to public welfare. And it's like, man, I'm left scratching my head on that one. I don't know, does anybody else feel that tension?
Yes.
Chair Crosby, is your concern then, if we pick on the example of the windows, if you were to, because the way I read, I just want to be sure we're reading it the same way. The way I read that would be, they're requesting the variance so there would be no windows, essentially. And so if I hear what you're saying, that authorizing that, you feel it would be difficult to be able to find that, you think that would create some detriment to the public welfare if it were just approved without any windows. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, as I'm reading it, that granting the special variance would not be materially detrimental.
Yep. Yeah, so I think that's where it gets back to then, is if you find that the intent and the purpose are not going to be violated. So, you know, that's that broad sort of intent and broad purpose. It may very well lead you to something that is not necessarily, in this case, no windows, but some amount of windows. I guess it gets back to what Kelly was suggesting, that perhaps on the activated side, which it sounds like you sort of chose maybe one of two of those that are possible, that the commission would find, well, in order to meet what we feel is the intent and purpose, and in order to not be materially detrimental, there's going to have to be at least, you know, this percentage of windows. Maybe it's what the code would otherwise require. Perhaps it's not in maybe the code speaks to ground floor and upper floors. That probably is not terribly applicable in a building like this. I'd leave that to folks that are wiser in those areas. But maybe it's just, you know, kind of coming up with, you know, in order to meet those two criteria, we have to have some windows in this area. It couldn't be just no windows at all.
Okay.
You have a lot of flexibility with the standard like this. I mean, that's really the bottom line. Is it's an incredibly, I think that's probably in the past there's been discussion of I don't know the history of this provision. It's been in your code as long as I've been working with the city. It's nice because it does give the planning commission, and by extension the city council, if it went that far, you know, a lot of discretion to determine whether a variance would be appropriate. But it is pretty different than your typical variance criteria. But it's there, and it's certainly a standard that people can apply under.
Okay.
Commissioner or Chairman Crosby, can we move forward with closing the public hearing before we all forget?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. And anybody?
I move we close the public hearing.
Okay, moved by Don. Was that raised hand a second, Steve?
No, I actually had a question for the applicant.
Let's close public hearing first. So we have the motion by Don.
I think he asked, I think Commissioner Hook said he had a question for the applicant. So if he's going to ask that, I would now
Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and pick which one. We need short answer. So.
Yep, whoever wants to answer it. What flexibility are you willing to do with approval of a variance? Do you have any?
I was hoping that I understand the 70-30 on the west and south and the activated entrance of the west, because that's where the walkway is directly from every sidewalk in every area for the windows.
Okay, that help you, Chris? Or Stephen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, now we still have the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved in second just to close.
I'm sorry, who was the first on that? I lost track here.
Don first, Ron second.
Gotcha.
And hands up in favor of closing the public hearing. That delay in hearing. Okay. Public hearing is closed. Ron, you want to move us to a motion?
Not really.
Well, I think we beat this one to death. I think we can do it.
Yeah, and I think that.
Can I just summarize something really fast to help Emily out, because she's going to be the one writing a final order on this. So what we would need is the motion to include the roof pitch, the metal, and the windows, and then also all other recommended findings and conditions that Emily put together. I just want to make sure we get that in there as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one by one, the recommendation from staff was to require only 30% of metal on the activated side and the south side, south and west.
South and west.
We understand that's probably where it's gonna, unless I see otherwise, that's where it's gonna be in the motion. The second thing is.
Well, Jerry, it says not to exceed 30. So, it doesn't have to be that. I don't think we're putting 30. I mean, the bottom line is we're denying the special variance.
That's right.
And the code says it has to be at least 30. So like I say, we're not designing it for them here tonight, but so it just seems to me like we're just denying the variance. Clarify that if I'm wrong, particularly David.
I don't know if you're denying the variance. You're saying.
Otherwise, they'd have to resubmit another request for variance if we deny this variance without making adjustments to it.
You're not denying the variance. I don't think you're approving the variance for 100% metal on the north and east facades and not approving the variance for the south and west facades.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like a partial approval, a partial denial.
Okay. On the roof pitch, I think at least I picked up unanimous on approving that special variance request to go with 412 instead of 612. I see heads nodding. Now we're down to the window requirement. Kelly had recommended or suggested it'd be most helpful to staff if we presented a percentage. They have asked, the variance has been asked to have no windows. So if we outright, is what's been suggested, we outright deny that request, that would throw it back to the code, which is either Emily or
30%.
30%.
Of the activated front.
Of the activated front surface, I want to say surface, but you know what I mean, wall,
Frontage.
frontage. Hollis?
So that's both the south and the west walls, is that correct?
Well, I think we were defining that the activated wall was the west one. I think you only have one activated wall?
It could be either the west or the south, but it only needs to be one. But it has to have a primary entrance and then meet the window standards to be activated.
Why don't we leave it on the activated wall? Then if they want to make some design changes, they could switch it to either the east, the west, or the south.
Yeah, I mean, just on the window side, for me, it feels like we're just denying this variance because they have all the flexibility to make it one activated wall within the code itself, correct?
I think, Emily, did you define the west elevation as what we believe to be the activated frontage?
I recommended the windows would be on the west elevation, which would then make it the activated frontage, because that seems like, it seems like the more primary entrance, that's where the crosswalk is coming across to. And that's what kind of faces where the bench and the pedestrian walkway along the entirety of that western facade. So that was the staff recommendation, but by code, it could be the south one because that also has an entrance.
The reason to be honest, I kind of got tricked into it for a way. If you look at the west wall, it's all metal and there's a door on the left. Normally, the entrance to a building is probably in the center of the building. I mean, if they were to put the entrance in the center, put a awning or whatever with windows on each side, it would look like a primary entrance. But right now, they have one door on the far left.
Yeah, I think if you've been in batting cage facilities, though, the cages or the netted areas will run the length of the building, and only a section of the building will actually be an area outside the cages. So I'm pretty sure where those two doors are entering would be where the areas where you can kind of wait to hit next, and then you go into the batting cage. So if you put a door on the other side, it might be problematic for the design. Just know, I think
you'd be walking into the driveway of the garage path from the other side of the building.
Yeah, the other one looks kind of funny, but anyway.
Yeah, well, yeah, we can leave that to them.
It's also lined up with the crosswalk a little bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, as Dawn pointed out, the state building code will dictate their fire exiting, and based on the horizontal distance at an angle, if they need to put another door on the other side, they're going to have to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're back. We're still on the windows as to.
I think we got the windows.
I agree with Chris. Sounds like we're just denying the variance, and then they can take on the activated side and put in 30% windows or come back to us, I guess.
Okay, is that how it would play out, Kelly or Emily?
Yeah, I mean, they would have to choose which side is the activated side, either the south or west, and then they're going to have to propose at least 30% windows on that activated frontage or activated side, and then meet the rest of the window code requirements for placement of windows and size.
That's what I was recommending.
Okay. All right. I don't know if any of you have been taking notes so you can make a motion.
I'll try it.
Oh, good, Ron.
Yeah, you gave him a heads up originally and said, Ronnie, you're going to do it.
I'll make the motion that we approve, what is it, 20-040 design review / variance as recommended by staff with the variance for the special variance for, or approve the variance for metal on 100% on the north and east sides of the structure. We approve the variance for the roof pitch of 412, and we disapprove, reject the window, I'm not sure how to say that one, the special variance on windows. And then along with all the other general conditions of approval as presented by staff. Sorry, a little long.
No, I think he nailed it, didn't he, David?
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Ron, seconded by Chris. I won't repeat the whole motion. I'm assuming you were all listening. And Kelly, in your note taking, you feel you've got it sufficiently?
Yeah, I had already written it down in case you guys needed help, but Ron nailed it. I'm gonna buy an extra pastry at the toll gate for that.
All right, then let's move to a roll call vote.
Okay. Commissioner Carlton,
Yes.
Commissioner Lasowski,
Yahoo, yes.
Commissioner McLean Wenzel,
Yes.
Commissioner Hook.
So yes for the application, no for the metal variance, yes for the roof, and no for the windows.
I don't know if we can have it in the motion like that.
Yeah.
David, you
Okay,
need.
then it's a flat out no.
Okay, that's much simpler. I think it would have to be a separate motion, wouldn't it, David?
It
Yeah.
would.
Yeah, you'd have to do every special variance as a separate motion, right?
Yeah, you would. Okay, Commissioner Mayton
I'm a yes.
and Chairman Crosby.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Just one thing, Jerry, just, with respect to Stephen, would have been better, maybe just quick dialogue here on process to have, done each one separately. It sounded like Stephen was okay with some and not the others. Is that what I heard you say, Stephen?
Yes, I was okay with the motion except for the metal walls.
Yeah, it does. It is a kind of a, when you throw three things in together, it's, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to always make sure that commissioners have an opportunity to say yes to certain things and no to other things without saying no to the whole thing, or yes to.
I can put it in the notes that Commissioner, you guys have done this before, that Commissioner Hook expressed that his main concern was the metal walls.
Okay.
So it just doesn't look like he's not in support of the project.
Okay. All right, we have one more special hearing. Are you all up for just jumping into it?
2-minute stretch.
Yeah, thank you, Bryce.
Chairman, I just have one thing first. I would like to ask Commissioner Hook to make the motion on the last one, since he's the newest commissioner on our board, if he could please do that. Thank you.
Did we make you do it when you were new?
You absolutely did make me do it on my first night.
Okay, be ready, Stephen. All right, we'll take a 2-minute break.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, Commissioner Hook, in the future, and we can talk about this more, but I was just thinking about this during the break, is that when we have these special variances, and we do get them quite often, my recommendation would be that if you want to vote no, like you did on one of them, and yes on the rest, I would just ask for us to do separate motions for each variance request and then an overall motion for the proposal. We've done that on other applications where there's a council commissioner that wants to do that.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Not clarifying that for you.
Yeah, it's not unusual for us to do that.
No.
Don, you keep moving around.
Hey, every new topic needs a new background.
Watch out for that crocodile behind you there.
We're in Wangi National Park in the middle of Zimbabwe. It's a man-made water hole. It might have some hippo in it, but actually no. It's no crocs, but you are correct. There are crocs in other places.
Well, aren't hippos supposed to be more dangerous than crocs?
I don't know. It depends if you're out of water or in the water.
Yeah.
Because if you're out of the water, if you can't outrun a crocodile, you're slow. But I guarantee you'd be surprised how fast like a hippo and a rhino can run. I guarantee you none of us on this panel can outrun either one of those.
Yeah, I watch a lot of National Geographic with my kids, and we heard the other night that hippos average can run 30 miles an hour. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So the answer is if you're in the water, you're probably okay. But on land, you better learn how to dodge that. And or actually the one animal that's the most dangerous, kills more people, is a Cape buffalo.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, the old guys get on their own and they get cantankerous, and people are walking and they don't know they're there. And by the time they come at you, you don't have a chance to react. So,
Okay. I think everybody is back in the room. So we will move on to the final public hearing of the night. This is legislative in nature. It's another one that we will be making a recommendation to pass on to City Council. So at 9:34, we will open public hearing. This is for file number 20-032, Design Code Amendment for responding to House Bill 2001 Code Amendments. Any abstentions from any commissioner? Okay, nothing seen. Any conflicts of interest to declare? Well, because this is legislative, we go straight to staff report.
Hot diggity dog.
All right, I will share my screen. Okay, so tonight we are looking at the House Bill 2001 Code Amendments again. So we did have that work session back in October. There have been a couple changes since then, but not many, because again, as you know, these are this is based on the state House bill. So we have to pass these amendments by this coming June, at least most of them. And I'll try and highlight some of the ones that aren't mandatory. We talked a little bit about that, about some issues at the work session, and got feedback on that. And so those have been kind of incorporated. So just, again, a brief overview, and some of these slides are exactly the same as from the work session. So you've seen them before, but the main goal is to amend our development code in compliance with House Bill 2001. And so House Bill 2001 requires medium-sized cities like Sandy to allow attached duplexes anywhere a detached single-family residence is allowed, and it prevents cities from applying more restrictive development standards to duplexes than what's applied to single-family residences. So this includes design standards, parking requirements, and density thresholds. House Bill 2001 also prevents cities from applying minimum parking standards and owner occupancy requirements to ADUs. So this is mainly what needs to be incorporated into the code. We've worked pretty closely with DLCD, on drafting these code amendments. And there are so far 7 chapters, and as you'll see at the end of the presentation, we may need to bring in an 8th. So starting with chapter 1730, which is our zoning districts chapter, the only change in that chapter was that we added a clause stating that duplexes shall be counted the same as a family residence for the purpose of calculating maximum density. And that is a requirement of the House bill. In 1734, primarily residential, this was our only residential zone that didn't allow duplexes outright. So we had to update that to allow duplex as a primary use permitted outright. And then of course we removed it as a minor conditional use because it was previously in our code allowed as a minor conditional use. So now it'll be allowed as a primary use permitted outright in SFR, as well as all the other residential. And then we amended the references to single detached dwelling, which occurred in minimum lot area and minimum lot width within our development standards, to read single detached dwelling or duplex. So that again is to treat the duplex the same as the single detached dwelling. And then we added some code language to clarify the requirement related to sanitary sewer connection. And I believe that was more of a clarification. In 1760, we just added or duplex after all of the references to single family dwellings. And again, that's just to treat duplexes the same as a single family dwelling, which is the whole intent of the code. 1774, our accessory development chapter, saw more changes. This is where the ADUs are. So we updated the off-street parking standard for ADUs to be no minimum. That is required by House Bill 2001. We deleted the text related to ADU occupancy limitations, again required by House Bill 2001. We also proposed to increase the maximum square footage of an ADU from 600 to 800 square feet. We discussed this a little at the workshop last fall. It's not a requirement of House Bill 2001, but we as staff thought that raising the maximum, increasing the maximum square footage might indirectly support House Bill 2001 by potentially having more people want to build ADUs if they could be a little bit bigger. And then we revised the design standards and the additional requirements sections to be clear and objective. So they weren't very clear and objective before. In 1782 transit streets, this is a new one since the workshop. It's a little bit confusing, but essentially this came up because we had a pre-application meeting that happened to be on a flag lot on a transit street, and they're requesting conversion of a single family to a duplex. So this kind of brought up this issue. But essentially, if you remember our transit street chapter in section 1782 20B and C, basically says that a residential dwelling would need to face that transit street and have a direct pedestrian connection to it. It does not exempt flags, which kind of is a little odd because the flag is often set back and already a paved flag. So we did add an exemption for single family residences, duplexes, or single family residences converted to duplexes on flag lots where the driveway approach to the flag poles on a transit street does not have a frontage on a second transit street. We are exempting that from the standards of section 1782 20B and C, which is specifically to have that front door oriented to the transit street with the direct pedestrian connection. So I think technically for House Bill 2001, we would only need to exempt conversion of the single family residence to the duplex. We think it makes sense to also exempt the single family residence and duplex specifically on these very specific flag lots with only the one frontage on the transit street. For 1798, this is the parking code. We reduced the minimum number of required parking spaces for duplexes to 1 per dwelling unit or 2 total. And that is to match the 2 parking space minimum for SFR. And this is a House Bill 2001 requirement. We also revised the code language so that the driver requirement for a duplex is the same as for a single family dwelling. Again, to treat the duplex the same as the single family dwelling. And then we revised the residential on-street parking requirement to be the same for a duplex as for a single family dwelling, and exempted ADUs, multifamily, and conversion of a single family residence to a duplex from the on-street parking standard. So this is the standard that requires the 1 on-street parking space within 300 feet of the front door of a dwelling. So it just be, in this case, one space within 300 feet of the duplex. And that would be required to treat the duplex the same as the single family residential. In chapter 17-100, land division, we revised the residential shared private drive language to reference required off-street parking spaces rather than dwelling units, so that duplexes are treated the same as single family residential residences. So currently the code limits a shared private drive to 2 units, but that would not be treating a duplex the same as a single family residential in the case of if somebody wanted to have 2 duplexes on those lots instead of 2 single family dwelling. But the parking requirements would be the same since we have to treat the duplex the same as the single family residential. So now it's limited, I believe, to 4 required off-street parking spaces. One thing that came up that is not in the staff report and not in the proposed code changes that we realized more recently that would probably need to change, and this would be based on what you guys want to recommend to council, but I think it would need to be changed either way, is that the definition of accessory dwelling unit that we have in chapter 1710, our definitions chapter, actually limits that ADU to lots with single family residences. So as you can see there, it says the definition of an accessory dwelling unit is a second dwelling unit either in or added to an existing single family detached dwelling. So House Bill 2001 requires medium-sized cities to allow a duplex wherever single family residences are allowed, but it does not require a city to allow both a duplex and an ADU. We talked about this at the workshop in the fall. And it seems like Planning Commission was fine with allowing both the duplex and the ADU on the same lot. And that's actually what staff thought our code allowed, because our code in the ADU section in chapter 1774 says that ADUs are allowed in any residential lot. But in looking at the actual definition, we realized that in 1710, it does limit it to an ADU on or in or added to an existing single family detached dwelling. So if you do want to recommend allowing both a duplex and an ADU on the same lot, the definition of the ADU will need to be updated in chapter 1710 as well. And probably we want to just clarify that definition regardless. So that would be something that we would bring that chapter as well moving forward as this goes to council. And then the last point, just another consideration, House Bill 2001 requires local governments to consider ways to increase the affordability of middle housing, including considerations related to SDC's property tax exemptions and construction taxes. To address this, and also just in preparation for the next housing needs analysis that will be required to do as part of another House Bill 2003, and that will come at a future date. We have, as a city, hired Eco Northwest, and they're putting together a housing strategy memo, and that's going to include information about potential policies that could be implemented to address the city's housing needs. And it will include property tax exemptions, waiving or deferring system development charges, and construction taxes, in addition to a whole bunch of other potential things. And so these are things the city does not have to adopt, but does need to consider. So these are being considered, and there will be a work session for council that's scheduled for March 15th. So that is how we're kind of considering these things and going to be addressing them. So that concludes the PowerPoint. So again, this is tonight you are going to be making a recommendation to council. A majority of these changes are required by the state. There are a few though that are not necessarily required and were just recommendations. And like I said, most of them I believe we covered at the work session already. But I do think the 1782 Transit Street ones were newer because that came up directly through a pre-app. And then the 1710 definition is another one.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you for all your work on this. My goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed part of the beginning of her presentation because I was moving rooms because my computer was about to run out of battery, which would have killed the whole meeting on us tonight. So I had to do that. I just want to reiterating, I don't know if Emily already stated this.
You're muted, Kelly. You're muted.
Oh, so I missed the first part of Emily's presentation because I was moving rooms to keep the meeting going to plug in my computer. I just wanted to reiterate, and Emily might have already covered this, but we were working closely with Sean Edging at the state of Oregon. And so we kind of asked him to poke holes in what we put together and find things that we need to consider additionally to make sure it's complying with House Bill 2001. And he's been great to work with, and he's done a good job of finding a few other things and kind of stating, like in the ADU section, he found that there was a section that was not clear and objective, and he said it was not meeting the intent of House Bill 2001. So we are making modifications based on his recommendations. So I just wanted to reiterate that it's not only been looked at by internal staff, but we have had at least 3 members of the DLCD who is in charge of applying House Bill 2001 around the state of Oregon look at this very specifically for our city. And then we also had Jean, I'm blanking on her last name, with the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, and she has also looked at it very extensively.
Okay. Well, we can move right into, wait, we're supposed to have public testimony. Read your script, Jerry. And I'm just going to open it up. I don't see, and I'm not sure that we'll have others. We'll just open up to public testimony, whether in favor or opposed, since this is just legislative in nature.
Just fine.
And so if you do have a comment that you'd like to make, remember, if you're on Zoom, click the raise hand button. If you're on the telephone, it is *9, wait to be identified. And when you first speak, give us your name and your address. So Kelly will look for any public comment that may appear.
We only have 3 people remaining with us at this point. I think people are getting fatigued from the long meeting. I do not see anybody with their hands raised, so I think you can move
All right.
forward.
So that kind of makes staff recap a moot point, and we can take a motion to close the public hearing and then have our discussion.
I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved by Don, seconded by Stephen to close the public hearing at 9:49. All in favor, hands or thumbs up, or? All right. Motion passed. Public hearing closed. Okay. Discussion.
I want to ask Emily just one question. I was going to maybe do it earlier, but do it now just to educate me. I'm a little dense sometimes, but you repeat it enough times, I usually get it. On 1730, I was looking, essentially the clause states that duplexes shall be counted the same as a single family residence. So under our current situation in SFR, you do the density calc. Let's say for grins, you get 150 as a minimum number. Does that make sense? Then that also means you could have 150 duplexes or 300 living units. Is that a correct interpretation?
Yes.
So essentially, what I understand that we have no choice but to approve this, etc. This is just, my concern is this is still Sandy, it's not Portland. And I understand a lot of this and how it fits into serious metropolitan areas, etc. But no matter how you want to cut it or what you want to say, people are going to have cars. They're going to have cars. And we specifically went to minimum lot sizes a while back when we changed our code. This is maybe like 7, 8 years ago, maybe it was 10, I don't remember. When we had like Sandy Bluff 6 with 4,000 square foot lots and cars on top of cars, and everywhere. So what this really means, I just want to make sure we're just aware, is that that's what somebody theoretically could do. And right now, for example, we require a certain amount of off-street parking. and you theoretically could have twice as many living units. My point is if you have that many living units, you're going to have the stuff that goes with living units, you know, people and their vehicles and all the rest. Because they're still going to go to Fred Meyer. They're still going to do this. They're not going to walk to the store. They're probably not going to take public transit. So that's just something where you just need to kind of mentally get our head around. I guess I'm trying to get my head around to understand that is what's theoretically possible. On the other hand, I also believe that based on our zoning, the developers are the smartest ones, and the market's going to prevail. Supply and demand and all the rest for whatever we have. You know, if there's a great market for duplexes, they're going to build duplexes. If there's no market for them, they're not. They're going to build maybe single family residential homes. But to me, that was just the biggest, you know, Emily, that's just kind of the biggest shock to me or understanding. You think we got parking problems now going down, you know, streets and this and that, you know, down the road, we're going to have more of them, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I should clarify that. So the code, we can't require more parking spaces than what's required for a single family development. So that we have to stick to that. But it will probably be market driven, and just based on what we see now, you know, we require 2 off-street parking spaces. We're now seeing typically 3 to 6 or 4 to 6 probably, because you have 2 inside a double car garage, which is sometimes a triple car garage, plus the spots out front on a single family in that setback. So my guess, just based on like how development's happening, is that developers, even if they're doing a duplex, would still end up with 2 per unit, at least 1 in a driveway and 1 in that setback in front. But in theory, yeah, they could just propose the 2 for the duplex rather than.
I mean, I'm talking about, it's a worst case scenario, I'm saying, but you know, this is, like I said, I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around what this kind of means.
They also, they're predicting at the state level and in terms of like kind of future thinking that you can only really assume a 3% increase. That you probably only 3% of the people who can create, you know, build duplexes instead of single family residential will do that. But that's just kind of based on, you know, for the purposes of modeling, that's what we're supposed to assume. Obviously, it could be more, it could be less. But that's kind of what they've come up with at the state level of what they expect, I guess.
You know, in my 2 cents is, I think that I'm trying to wrap my head around it, but also I think we're stuck into how we've always viewed lots and the construction thereof. And I think that the developers are smart and people are smart. We're going to have denser housing, and though we can figure out different ways to park, use all these shared parking structures, I don't know. But I think the market will demand some of that, and the code will change to go along with it. It's kind of like duplex lives matter. You know, they've been kind of a little bit of the stepchild, and the legislature is trying to bring that forward. And so I'm just saying for myself, I'm trying to think a little bit more outside the box of how can it work. And I think that, you know, we all think about a lot or lots with the houses on them, and now when we get a lot of duplexes, hey, you may have different structures tied together. I don't know, but I think that's what makes this great is we're smart and we'll come to something that really works. But denser housing is here, right? And I'm just trying to figure out how do we get it to work better into Sandy as opposed to being just kind of forced into different areas. So anyway, let's make a motion and get out of here.
Well, I think it's here, Ron. I think it's here. That it's just that doesn't mean we have denser housing everywhere. I mean, if that's the case, we're in downtown Portland. You know, why are people moving, you know, kind of out here? I mean, I'll give you a simple example. You know, we went through the views and we all struggled with the issues there, but on the upper views, we all struggled with the density part. And if he's going to do that, I look at it and say, well, if he'd have just taken and made duplexes on every one of those, and made them 7,500-foot lots and put duplexes on all of them, he'd end up with the same number probably of living units. And it would have been, and then you'd had 60-foot frontage. You would have had 15 feet on each side. You wouldn't have to worry about, because now they're together. you wouldn't need a variance on the sides. There'd been a creative way to kind of do that, and it might look really nice as a structured duplex development.
Yeah.
So there, I mean, there's positives that I think can come about of it. So I think I wanted to say some stuff.
And I think that all the commissioners have done this, but Emily, I read through all your changes, and thanks for the devils in the detail type of thing. But all the little changes that were made, thank you.
What is input on the definition of ADU? Thoughts?
Go ahead, Steve.
I like it. I think it makes it more clear, and ADUs are they're important, and they're becoming more and more necessary, especially for families that need to take care of their elderly parents, like myself.
So you're, go ahead, Hollis.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I went to the Oregon.gov page and read what they said about House Bill 2001, in addition to everything that Emily had given us. And really, one of the things it hammered home was the ability for people to stay in a neighborhood for the, you know, like to stay in the same neighborhood, area, community over the course of their life, and specifically with elder people. That once you retire and you're on a fixed income, you might have to downsize and sell your home, and it allows people as they age to stay in the same neighborhood near maybe grandchildren, children, caregivers, not having to abandon their community because they can't afford to live in a full-size single-family dwelling. And that really, I mean, it said young people too, like young people may not be able to afford a big house, but you know, there's just a lot of different kinds of people with a lot of different kinds of needs, and I think it's going to be a good thing.
Okay. I want to get clarification on Steve. You were suggesting then that the definition, if I'm reading you right, so correct me, is there would be a second dwelling unit. On the definition of an ADU is a second dwelling unit either in or added to an existing single-family detached dwelling or duplex. Is that the same way that Emily had changed to other places, just adding it on there? Is that how I read you?
Yes.
Okay. Any other input on that? Because I think that's where Emily was leaning.
Yeah, I mean, I think staff is fine with that, but you know, ultimately, as Emily described, that's like one of 2 or 3 things that you have some discretion on tonight. A lot of the staff recommendations, they're not really anything that we're recommending. It's just we're being required to do it, so that's why they're being forwarded to you. So yeah, whether you want to allow ADUs just with single-family homes or also with duplexes is one consideration. Another one is if you guys are fine with the ADU maximum square footage increasing from 600 to 800 square feet. And I think another one was to deal with the flag lots with transit streets, which I'll just admit is very confusing, and we can talk about that if you want. But that one might lead us down a very long rabbit hole. It's going to be very seldomly even applicable. But basically what we found is with a 15-foot flag lot, which is allowed by code, and a 12-foot minimum design driveway requirement, or 10-foot, it doesn't really even leave any room for a walkway, because we don't allow pervious surface up to the property lines for stormwater reasons. So we can talk about that one if you guys want, but I think my preference would just be to kind of go with staff's recommendation on that one, unless you guys want more clarity. But I do think those other 2 items, we really do need some clarification and some information from you guys on what you want to recommend to council for those 2.
Okay. Any thoughts on the flag lot issue other than what staff is recommending? Nobody's jumping to the mic or hitting their let me in button. So I think that would then stay. That's the top of the second page, if that's where it's written, or I'm seeing it. Okay, well, I'm trying to move us along here. The 600 to 800 square foot increase, 200 square foot increase on ADUs. I'm seeing thumbs up on 3. There's 4. Okay. I don't think we need to discuss that further. What was that third one? Was it the definition or?
Yeah, it's basically to get some clear, and maybe there's another one that I missed, Emily. So please, if I missed something from your presentation, you know this stuff way better than I do. But the third one that popped out to me was, do you guys want to allow ADUs with both single family homes and duplexes, or only, Emily, can you provide more clarity on that? You're the one that talked to the state on that one.
The definition, like I said, right now for ADUs in our code precludes them to just be a single family residential. But then if you look at chapter 1774, let me see if I can just pull it up quickly and read it directly. It says for permitted zoning districts, it says accessory dwelling units are allowed in any zone that allows single family or multifamily housing and within the central business district C1 and village commercial district C3. So we always thought at the last workshop, we just thought ADUs could be in any, any residential zone basically. And then we figured out our definition actually ties it just to the single family residence. So what we need to know is if you are recommending that we allow an ADU attached to both a single, or doesn't have to be attached, but I mean in conjunction with both a single family residence and a duplex, but also multifamily could be thrown in there as well. And House Bill 2001 does not require both an ADU and a duplex to be allowed on the same lot, but certainly we can allow that, and we thought we were allowing that the whole time. So just to get your thoughts on that. But it's the duplex and also multifamily potentially.
And it gets very confusing because a multifamily, an ADU is a multifamily unit essentially. So, to allow with that, I think we already kind of allow that.
Maybe one way to think about it as well is just, this is one area that you do have a policy choice. I mean, most of 2001, the policy choice has been made for you, and the vast majority of the edits reflect that, and just basically conforming the city's code to what 2001 says. But here, I think the policy choice is really, with respect to ADUs, you could look at it as just basically only having 2 units on one lot. So the ADU and then a single family home, or having 3, essentially, a duplex, 2 units, and then an ADU as well on the same lot. I think, and then of course there's also if you really want to take it a step further, if you had, a triplex or another ADU, I suppose. I guess it's always got to be accessory to a dwelling. So I think the real question is just, do you want to see it allowed with a lot that already has a duplex, or would you want to just have it limited to lots that have single family residences?
I personally think either one is fine. I think practicality will take over. If you look at the lot sizes in Sandy and you stick a duplex on it, unless you have at least a 7,500 square foot lot, I know where you're going to stick an 800 square foot ADU. Now, some of you know where I live. I live in an area of Sandy that'll never occur again, by the way, that has lots up to 20,000 square feet. I live on a 10,000 square foot lot. So my point is, there's got to be room to put it. And all our lot sizes that are 7,500 feet or less. So yeah, I'm thinking like R2, and that Nicholas Glen is R2 for those who remember Nicholas Glen and next door to Bailey Meadows. And Emily might help me out here. I could grab the code and look, but what are the setback requirements for an ADU from the property line?
If it's detached, it would be the same as the main structure, so whatever, based on the zone. I think, is that correct, Kelly?
So
Yeah,
like 10,
I think that's correct, yeah. We don't get very many ADUs right now, and we
Well,
allow,
and that's what
and
I'm
we've
saying.
been pretty, and we've even allowed adjustments to make them up to like larger than 600 square feet, so.
Well, that's my point, is we can talk about this, but I think we're leaping over, you know, something with a pole vault pool where it's not really going to probably see very many of them. Just because we're not in Laurelhurst, for example, where there are these legacy large lots. In, you know, in Sandy, they're doing large lots in Sandy. I know, Kelly, is where I am.
Yeah, there's not, I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, you could take one of the older lots that's never been partitioned and was divided through means of deed back in the 60s or 70s. You know, some of those are like an acre or two in town, but my general thought or feeling would be that there wouldn't be a lot of concern if somebody put a duplex with an ADU on 2 acres. I mean, who cares?
Yeah, I don't care. And
Exactly.
like I said, I think it's fine because I don't think you have to worry about it. Find a 2-acre lot inside the city limits.
Yeah, as Emily does say, I mean, besides for SFR, for all other zones, we allow duplexes and SFR, and we allow ADUs. And how we've interpreted it, at least the 10 years I've worked in Sandy, is that you could have an ADU with the duplex. And I don't remember a single instance of when somebody's actually taking us up on that. So right. I think they will happen, but it's going to be very few and far between, I would think. Now watch, we'll get like 3 of them tomorrow morning when we go to the office.
Yeah. Okay, so to try and wrap up on this definition, are we okay with forwarding on to council the addition of duplexes in the definition?
Yes.
Okay. So it would read a second dwelling unit either in or added to an existing single-family detached dwelling or duplex. And you probably would also, the last sentence in the definition says such a dwelling is an accessory use to the main dwelling. You know, what's the main dwelling of a duplex? Is there 2 main dwellings on a duplex, in which case this would allow for 2 ADUs? On paper, I'm granted that in practicality it may not happen, but you see what I'm saying? That last sentence.
We would edit that sentence to read the same, probably to whatever it said, it would just say single family residence or duplex instead of main dwelling would be my guess.
Oh, there'd only be 1.
Yeah.
There would only be 1 according to this, correct?
1 ADU, yeah.
On a duplex.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. When you're in a duplex, Kelly, technically you said you just kind of have a common wall agreement, right? I mean, who owns the backyard? I mean, how does that get split?
So yeah, if it's a duplex, everybody owns. So there's just one property owner on a duplex. So the whole property is owned by one person, and the duplex is owned by one person. A row house is when it's 2 lots with a common wall with a firewall, and then somebody different owns lot A than lot B, and different ownership for those 2 units. Right. Even though it might look like a traditional duplex, they're called row homes because they're on different lots. Then there's the third option where you have 1 lot, because there always has to be a caveat, right? You have 1 lot that's commonly owned by 2 property owners through a condo association, and each member of the condo association owns one of the sides of the duplex. So there is that, and we do have one of those in Sandy.
Or they have an undivided 50% interest in the whole thing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So what I guess what I was driving at is one guy wants to build the ADU where it's his property to build it on.
Yeah, it would just be 1 property owner that would own the duplex and the ADU and the lot.
And I would say in that more absurd example or rare example, from the city's perspective, if you have in fact 2 owners, you know, whether it's the row home example or a ladder example of the condo. I think from the city's perspective, it's just, well, as long as both of them are agreeing to have an ADU on their property, have at it, right? If only one of them did, I think that's a more difficult issue.
We do have one guy that came in for a pre-app. What was that, Emily? 6 months ago, maybe, that he's looking at doing a duplex with an ADU. But again, it's like a huge lot on the bluff. It's like probably at least 1.5 acres. So that's the only one I even remember talking to in the last 10 years about the concept.
I mean, in most cases, I'm assuming that's going to be one common owner, right?
It would be, yeah. He would actually just rent all 3 of them.
Yep.
Yeah. And they're probably going to go for a lot of money, honestly, because they're all going to have views of the bluff and everything and of the river. So.
Okay, I'm just looking over the notes from Emily, and the changing the square footage to 800 square feet is in the proposed regulations changes. So that, if we send them on, that will take care of that. The flag lot, so we really don't have to make a decision on the 600 to 800 if we approve recommend the wording that's been proposed. So we don't have to single that out unless we were against it, but I didn't pick that up.
Yeah, from what I'm hearing is you'd just be recommending a motion to city council to approve it as recommended by staff. I think that's what I'm kind of hearing, at least.
With the tweaking of the ADU definition. Correct?
Correct. That's the way I read it.
All right. Have you been following that, Chris? Or Steve? I want to keep calling you Chris. You're right.
I have.
Right next to him.
All right. I will motion to approve file 20-032 PCA HB 2001 code amendments with chapter 17.10 having a definition change as indicated by staff in their staff report, but changing the last part of the definition to the single family residence or duplex, and then chapters 17.30, 17.34, 17.60, 17.74, 17.82, 17.98, and 17.100 as indicated in staff report.
And I will second that.
Got that, Kelly?
All right.
I want that motion in the minutes, word for word.
You might have a slightly abbreviated, but yeah, I got it. Very well done, Mr. Hook.
I think we've got ourselves a motion maker.
Yes. All right. Well, let's.
Who was the? I'm sorry. In my laughter, who was the second on that? Okay.
I seconded.
Okay. Let's move to a roll call vote.
Okay. Commissioner Carlton?
Yes.
Commissioner Lisowski?
Yes.
Commissioner McLean-Wenzel?
Yes.
Commissioner Hook?
Yes.
Commissioner Mayton?
Yes.
And Chairman Crosby?
Yes. Motion carries. You're duly initiated, Stephen. And one more motion. We got our discussion out of the way early. Don't you like that change of our agenda?
Yeah, well, when I bring up the cheetahs, it means it's time to go home. So I move we go home.
I second that.
Okay, been moved to go home by Don and seconded by Hollis. All in favor, raise your thumbs. I see everybody's in favor.
Even the cheetahs are in favor.
Yes, well, you don't want to argue with them.
Because they can run faster than a hippo.
Well, thank you, everyone. I was getting started the 30 minutes early made a big difference, I think.
It really did. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the great write-up prior. It helped me a lot get through this. And I would like to one more time welcome Commissioner Hook to the Sandy Planning Commission.
Yeah, absolutely. Quick question. Would people be amenable to starting meetings at 6:30 instead of 7? So we could try to end a little earlier in the night?
Works for me.
I don't know, how's your babysitting go, Kelly?
Yeah, I can do it at 6:30. That's fine. I can't do it any earlier than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even, you know, we've been lately doing it if we see that the meeting's going to be extra long, so we move it earlier. But if the meeting was kind of a normal length, you'd get out half an hour early.
Yeah, exactly. I just, you know, after 10 o'clock is getting late.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, thank you for your stamina tonight. I appreciate everybody.
All right.
Yeah, thanks everybody. We put a few of those tonight because we were trying to push everything to one meeting, so appreciate it.
Everybody say goodnight to Jeff. All we've seen is his name, but he's been there all night.
He records and uploads the meetings for me. He's super awesome about that.
All right. We'll see you guys.
Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.